Okay, good afternoon, everybody. It is Tuesday, January 16th. Board of Commissioners has been meeting in executive session this morning, but now begins our public part of our meeting, and we have staff and community presentations. And first up is the Phillips Property Future Development Update with G.R. Fielding, and I think Ashley and Suzanne are here in support, and
Sure.
Rich and whoever else.
John.
Ready when you are. And Steve, is Steve online? Do we know if Steve's with us?
We definitely need Steve.
Hi, Kelly.
Hi, if you have an iPhone charger, I'd love to borrow
I
it.
might have a cable.
It's not right this second.
I don't know if Steve is online with us yet, but I think we ought to get things going. Okay. Well, I think he'd want to be here. This. A tea bag
Zip tie.
and a zip tie. Are we trying to reach Steve, or is anybody else?
Do you
Or
want me to text him?
we could try that.
Text Steve Child.
Good up to you.
Hi Steve, exclamation point. Are you able to join us at the
Poor
BoCC meeting?
GR.
Question mark. We would love your participation in the Phillips conversation.
Okay, so there's probably some introduction you can start with before Steve comes in.
Sure.
And then maybe he'll have a chance to join us by then.
Thank you, Greg, Board. I'm G.R. Fielding. I'm the Engineering and Construction Director. Today we're going to talk about a bit of an update on the Phillips Affordable Housing Project. Just point out, these are a couple interesting images that I found to put up for this first slide. On the left is an aerial photo where you can see just about the entirety of the Phillips property. It actually starts just out of frame on the bottom, and it goes all the way up to here.
Cool.
And then here's the Riverside units over here. And then on the right is a historical document that we dug up that it was a sketch of the original mobile home park.
I thought maybe you whipped that up yesterday. when
That
you
was
were
the napkin they did their initial layout plan on.
You know, whatever it takes sometimes, Greg.
Is there anything? Can you go back to that just for a sec, just so we can get another quick look? Is there anything that we need to identify in that is different from? I guess you're going to go into that, right?
Sure. Yeah, I just thought it was always good to start with some context, right? And so this gives you the whole property and what it started as. So.
Great, thanks.
So my agenda for today was just a very quick architectural schematic design update. The board had seen the schematic design mid last year. A couple engineering updates. There's a lot of progress in water, wastewater, geotechnical, geohazards, and civil design. We did have a set of consultants come in and update our project costs. And then we can take those sets of costs and what we know today and do a little bit of projection into what the ongoing community affordability can be in the future. John, is there anything else that you wanted to interject into that? Cool. But to revisit, the current BoCC direction was for 73 total units. The way the math breaks down on that was 28 existing mobile home slots that are left in the existing mobile home park, 35 new stick-built units, 10 relocation units. Those are plus or minus the relocation units depending on how a few things shake out.
And a relocation unit is actually, it's not necessarily a building that has been moved, but it's a tenant space that's moved to a new location.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah,
Thank
and so you can always think of that as a yes and. So they're in a slot now, and we need to give them a slot, and it's more tied to the people.
Rather than whatever the existing structure is.
Yes.
Okay.
On the right side of this slide is a bit of how that programming shakes out. On this slide, the existing units are a little bit grayed out, and what you see is basically the civil site design with one of the two debris flow mitigation channels, location of the water tank, all of the new roads, and then all of the new units.
Wow, this is interesting new information.
So none of this should be too much of a departure from what the board saw in conceptual design. All of those designs have just been brought forward further into their design development. Architecture, again, the board saw a lot of the renderings in a previous work session, but all of the schematic design is completed for the 35 new units. The programming includes anywhere from a 1-bedroom to a 4-bedroom, anywhere from a multi-family type unit to a single-family home. We have gotten through foundation design recommendations. All of the mechanical design recommendations are finished for all these types of units. And so what we have left to do in architecture is actually do the design development and come up with, final design sheets. But the schematic design is all completed for the 35 units that have been contemplated. In wastewater, we've had a lot of progress in that area. So there's a lot of back and forth with the state and CDPHE for a number of different things. We finalized a selection of a treatment type, and that goes into a number of reports to the state. The state then tells us what our design limits should be for the effluent that goes into the Roaring Fork. So we've gotten through the location site application and the design effluent limits, and both of those have been received from the state. So now we can go into final design for wastewater treatment.
Quick question on that. The location we want to place this is actually on the property. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we're not trying to acquire property to do. Can we close that curtain? Can't.
We,
Can't.
unfortunately, we have to unplug the controller, and we want to make sure it doesn't take everything else out when we do it. So,
Okay, all right.
sorry.
Branson.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, GR.
So the next step that we have for this is to submit what's called the process design report. So essentially, we've been working on all these things concurrently. And based on the effluent limits that the state has given us and the location that they've okayed, we go into this process design report and say, here's all of that together, and this is what we expect it to look like from an effluent limit level and how the processes will work. And so that is pretty imminent to go into the state here in the next few weeks.
Can I ask a quick question about the effluent limits the state sets? Are those a standard which we are okay with? Is that, I remember when Lazy Glen had an issue a couple of years ago, the effluent that was going into the river didn't look like water. It looked like and smelled like sewage. But somehow it still met the effluent limits, which kind of raises eyebrows. Is this going to be to the highest standard of cleanliness within, possibility and reason? Or is it just meeting a state standard, which is the state standard high enough?
It meets the state standard. The state standard is set around the amount of water that is flowing through the Roaring Fork. And so the good news is that the Roaring Fork is a fairly substantial river. And it's set around the different minerals and things. This is going to be a brand new facility. It's going to be state of the art.
Got it. Okay.
Can you always treat things more? Sure. Do you get well past the point of diminishing returns?
Yes. Okay. Now, in August, when the Roaring Fork is quite low, as we go into continue in a drought, are we calculating that water as for our flow of the river, or is it an average flow across the year? How do they calculate flow of the Roaring Fork when they do that?
I do not know the exact time that they take their flow rate, Greg, but I can certainly come back and
Just
have
be
a
good to know.
conversation about wastewater and the design process. But it's something that's dictated by the state and through CDPHE.
Okay. I just don't know how much scrutiny we need to apply to that. Thank you. Okay.
Beyond this meeting, what we would expect to do is all of this happens in an earlier design process for wastewater than it does for some other things. And so we would look to take the wastewater treatment facility from a 30% to 100% design. Water, we've done a lot of work in several different areas. One is there are two wells that are on the hillside portion of the property. And one of the questions that we had was, well, how much can that those two wells yield. The one that is pictured here is next to the ranch house. It is not a very deep well. It doesn't need to be a very deep well. But it can yield a lot of water, as can the one that is up on the hillside adjacent to the mobile homes. And so we did a yield test for both of those. Basically, the recommendation is if we rebuild the existing wells, they will be able to yield enough water to support what we've been studying as far as the occupancy at the units.
And that'll be supported by our water rights granted by the state?
Yes, yeah, so the existing wells have a certain flow, and that will support filling up a 200,000 gallon tank and being able to feed the requirements that both the Roaring Fork Fire gave us for fire flows and domestic water use.
Now's the, sorry, go ahead, Kelly. I just wanted to ask about the water quality testing on the lower well in particular. If it's a shallow well, that means it's probably right about river level or slightly lower. I don't know how deep it actually is, but there are issues with the Roaring Fork with mineral content, and we've got some issues coming out of Lincoln Creek, and it's affecting the taste of the water in Glenwood Springs. We know that. We've been told that. So it might meet the state standard, but would you want to drink it?
So a few thoughts around that, Greg. I haven't heard any complaints about the taste of the water that are coming from the existing wells.
Okay.
As far as the proximity to the Roaring Fork River, the term is called groundwater under the direct influence of an open body of water. And our water processing plant is designed with that in mind. And so that actually is what drives part of the cost of a water treatment facility.
Okay.
Does that create more cost for the type of system we need?
It does, but with a lot of the new state requirements, my understanding is that basically water treatment facility needs have increased across the board, no matter what, if you're building a new one.
So will there be two systems then, one down at the lower well and one at the upper well?
One will be a primary well and one will be a backup well, and they'll be linked, and they'll be linked up to the larger tank up above.
And so then the well that's across the river, will that be decommissioned?
No. Across the river, yes. Yeah.
Along with the sewer system and all the old stuff.
Yes.
Right, will be decommissioned. Thank you for asking that.
Where is the discharge for the wastewater treatment?
The discharge from the wastewater treatment plant is, I'm going to go back to the first slide, so hopefully I don't make anyone nauseous when I jump around. So this is a lower field, and then there's a lower field even below that. The wastewater treatment facility sits right here, and the effluent will be discharged into the river adjacent to the tree that you see right here.
This is the new one.
Yes.
The existing old one is farther downstream away.
The existing are versions of septic tanks.
Right? Okay. And farther down.
And there's a few of them, yes.
Okay.
And some of them are on one side of the river and some of them are on the other.
Great.
And all of that would need to be decommissioned once we have a wastewater treatment facility.
Going back to water quantity and quality, I guess, I think we're concerned that the Front Range water diverters could take more and are developing the capacity to take more water from the headwaters of the Roaring Fork, which could actually, I think, reduce the flow we get in the river. And I'm not prepared to opine on that because I don't know exactly what, but we're kind of told that we can expect more water diversion in future. Will that affect the amount of water availability to any development, including this one?
That's something that I haven't necessarily studied in this sort of context.
Right. Yeah, didn't think so, but I'm just thinking maybe that's a question for our legal department or somebody to look at.
We have talked about doing augmentation plans for this property in the water area, and we need to get through the next set of direction from
Before you know what you need.
Before we know what we need, and that
Okay.
kind of gets triggered.
Thank you. I love that well, though. We don't need to change anything there, do we?
They're all of that infrastructure is aging, Greg, and
This
it
is one
needs
of the
to be-
newer ones.
Well, so what you're seeing is actually the yield test. That is a piece of equipment inside of the well that is helping measure the amount of water and how much it gets drawn down based on how much is being pumped out of it.
Okay.
From a civil engineering standpoint, we have done design around 2 different debris flow areas. We've completed a geotechnical investigation that has done a number of boreholes at each of the building sites where the roads are going to go to come up with foundation design recommendations. All of the road layout is nearing completion. We do have some right-of-way work still to do with RAFTA through this area. And so all of that civil design element is all the way through schematic design. The debris flow areas are able to be mitigated. That is a very hard-fought point, as have been the water and the wastewater. Each one of these elements has been very iterative. So a lot of times we'll have an idea, we'll draw that up, it goes to a different person who can do the modeling, they'll do the modeling, they come back with some recommendations, we'll make some tweaks to the design. It isn't as easy as some of the other design elements. And so all of these elements, though, are ready to go into the final design as well.
Just a quick question about RAFTA. Is the RAFTA right-of-way issue just for infrastructure, like piping and stuff under the, or are we actually encroaching on the right-of-way with a building?
Yes, it's both. There are some existing units that encroach within the right-of-way, the way that it's drawn right now. We've been working with them. We need to get, we want to know where everything's going to be so that we can do this once.
Right, got it. And they're apprised.
We've been working with them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do they have any bright lines we should know about?
100-foot setback.
It's,
Which RAFTA?
it's all based on a rail corridor coming back, and so that's what we're trying to work through right now. So with all of the updates that we've done to the plans, not much has changed monumentally from the conceptual design that the board approved. We had the direction to bring it through schematic design. This is a bit of that, right? So we've gone through schematic design where we're starting to look at I's and T's and do all of that sort of work to make sure that we're not in our own way. We went through a pricing exercise with a contractor who looked at all of the earthwork, the vertical work, the roads, and the site improvements across the entire space. And put some numbers to that. I'm going to tell you one thing about numbers is that not a single one of these is right. Right? If we got any of them right, like, I'd be absolutely astonished. But we've worked up engineering estimates on the wastewater treatment facility, the water treatment facility, a water tank, how much it would cost to re-drill 2 wells. And so that's the infrastructure piece right there. I broke it down by the different roads and running utilities and the new roads, and then the vertical costs. And so the project total is a little bit more than what we had looked at last year, which we would expect. And so that for the 35 new units, some of the relocation area, all new utilities, all new wastewater treatment facility, water tank, new wells, is somewhere in the tune of $45 million. As part of the exercise in costing, we also looked at what ownership and maintenance would look like on all of the new things. Sorry, Kelly?
Is the relocation area vertical related to the 10 slabs? What else does that cover?
Yeah,
They're
there.
horizontal.
Yeah, no. So relocation area, the vertical that would have to go into that space to make them full units, and that. Again, these are all just estimates based on some assumptions going in. So for the relocation area, one of the things that you'll see in a few slides is that we'll come back and talk about that relocation area because that is one of the areas that we will need to have some future conversations and make some decisions around.
Okay, thank you.
So in the ownership and maintenance realm, we started to look at affordability of what this community would look like in the future. there's a number of assumptions that have to go into building out a pro forma around this. And so in asking some colleagues that are in the industry of what to shoot for and what to expect, there's a lot of different opinions. But usually there's some portion of a project that gets recuperated in the sale of the units or through fees. And so what I've assumed to build these out is an initial property recuperation of just 10% of what the purchase price of the property was. A payback of 25% of what would go into the the horizontal infrastructure, the wastewater treatment facility, the water treatment facility. We've made some good guesstimates, I would say, based on some other areas of what operations and maintenance of the wastewater treatment facility would look like, what the capital replacement looks like. There's a plug number for property management, and so that would keep us somewhere just short of about $300,000 a year for operations, which is it'll be, starting from something that is pretty much brand new all the way through.
I'm sorry, I was going to tally up that line there, and that doesn't make sense to me.
It
right
does
now.
the line on the left doesn't tally.
Okay.
That's a list of assumptions that get baked into
And
calculations.
so the ops budget at the bottom doesn't reflect any of the numbers above it?
It does if you take the right ones, Greg. But sorry, it's not supposed to be just like a summation at the bottom.
Got it.
So really what I'd like to do, though, is on this right side, the total estimated fees and reserves. This is the same spreadsheet that the board has seen in the past with updated numbers. With those sets of assumptions, with what the payback is and what the recuperation is, the total estimated fees and reserves would need to range from somewhere between $780 to $933 per month.
Per month.
Could you explain what the property purchase column is?
So the property purchase column is that initial property recoup at 10% of the property purchase.
The 6 million.
6.5 million was the property purchase. So I said 10% is 650,000. If you're to amortize that over 20 years, it comes out to $52 a month.
That's what the residents would pay us to reimburse us for our purchase, but it would not give them the ownership of the land, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
And so the whole idea is, for a lot of projects like this in the affordable housing space, you look for some sort of recuperation so that you're not just spending down your entire available funding. You need to get some of that back to have a sustainable program.
Well, it's rarely a 100% subsidy.
Right, and so
Right.
this is a 25%, so this would be 75% as assumed just around that horizontal or all the utility. And then it's about 30% is what I assumed on the actual vertical. That comes in with 73 units here. More assumptions is that the sale, like if we were to say we're going to sell the 35 stick-built units, again, that's something that we'll have to talk about what that model looks like in the future, but we had to just make an assumption to be able to actually finish the calculations. So sales prices between $200,000 and $500,000. The annual household income required is usually a 30% number that goes into housing. And so the far right column is where you would find that.
I'm not sure what this is. Could you explain that again? This is
John, you've done a really good job of surmising this before.
Yeah, so what we've tried to do is based on the different number of units and what we believe to be, demonstrate the economies of scale, right? And what an annual household income would need to be.
Oh, to support the
To support-
expenses on the previous slide.
Yeah, just so it's kind of
Okay.
answering that question,
Okay.
who are you serving?
Yeah, I get it. If you could leave it there for just a second, GR. Thank you, John. So
So
what is the total column for it?
So this is, so essentially,
If
again,
they
a set
buy
of
it.
assumptions going in is, let's pick a 2-bedroom. Based on the prior slide, all of their fees, rates, reserves, which you can think of almost as like an HOA fee, if that's the way that this place would be managed, would be $827 a month. Based on, I think this is about a $300,000 purchase. The mortgage and everything would be somewhere in the tune of $1,750 a month. That total then is those two numbers added. That would then give us the number that we could say 30% of your salary or salaries going towards housing is the rule of thumb that we've been using for this.
Right.
And so that annual household income required, so that would be the minimum that would be needed to be comfortable with those sorts of fees and mortgage payments, is what is what is depicted in the far right column.
Assuming that we sell it to them.
Yes, assuming that it's a sale model.
But
Or
that-
if you wanted it to cash flow as a rental, it's probably pretty similar.
Okay.
So this is
Thank you.
this is us providing roughly a 70 to 75% subsidy, I think, on the total cost.
Yes.
In that neighborhood per unit, Francie, which is pretty similar to what Aspen's done. It's pretty similar to what we've done with other affordable housing. So these numbers could shift depending on how much the board does or does not want to recover.
Right, and so
I
that
see.
part of the point is you have a couple levers that you can pull. It's the number that you divide by. The larger it is, so the more units you'd ever have, that brings things down. Or the amount that you're willing to subsidize, say the building of a wastewater treatment facility and a new water treatment facility. If that, I assumed a 25% payback on that initial capital that that would be spent to do that. If that number comes down, those affordability numbers become lower as well.
And what is the assumed payback with these numbers
25%
on the whole project?
25 to 30%. There's a lot of assumptions that go into making a pro forma right now, and so yes.
Did Steve ever join us? Do we know?
I didn't hear back from him either.
Okay, just checking.
Really too bad.
Steve, if you're listening, give us a call. Is that him?
Sucks that he's missing this. Especially since he's my voice.
Can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
Steve here.
All right, thanks. Just want to make sure you're.
I am totally baffled by the Zoom links that Charlotte gave us, and I am on the phone is all I'm listening. I can't see the screen. Maybe if I go into the public meeting, then I can see the screen.
Sure, give that a try. It's really, you won't, yeah, you'll need to see it.
He can't see it right now.
He's only on the phone. Yeah, he can't, the Zoom links didn't work somehow. Okay, maybe we'll have somebody contact you to try to fix that, Steve. Meanwhile, we're gonna keep going.
Can you send him the slideshow at some point?
Sure.
Not right now.
No, at some point.
Okay, so
So-
this is the $1 million or the $50 million question.
Right, and so based on the levers that we were just talking about, that really determines the future affordability of the community. We have designs up to through schematic design, so we have a decent amount of design development to understand what some of those capital costs would be. Knowing a bit of the type of technologies that we'd need to deal with water treatment and wastewater treatment, we can project how much it'll cost to maintain and keep those systems running adequately so we don't have any issues. And so that is, a very quick version of all of the iterative design that we've gone through to bring everything from conceptual design up through schematic design.
But are we going to see slides on what the breakdown is with more units?
So for more units, I haven't gone through a total design process to have hard costs like we have for schematic design of 73. What I can share is that we have looked at the that upper field, that we could fit more units there. It has a visual impact. But there's space for another 10, maybe even 20 if they're slightly denser units. The economies of scale that you get going from 73 to 81 or 82, that's a big jump just because of that's a bigger denominator to divide everything by for those costs.
You mean downwards jump? You mean cost to us or cost to the owners or the renters?
I'm talking about cost for the community that's there as
Their
far as,
costs.
yeah.
That would be a jump downwards you're talking about. Okay.
Yeah. And so you see, you can see if you were to add 15% more units, you get like a 10% lower cost per month for like an HOA fee. And when we're talking in the $700-800 range, that's a lot of, that's $70-80 a month.
I thought we saw a year ago a breakdown for different numbers of units with the numbers we had at that time, which of course are not these numbers, but didn't we see that?
Yeah, I don't remember if that was in that set of slides or not. We can certainly do that pretty quickly and come up with what those fees will look like at various different levels. That is pretty. It's already built out in some of the work that we've done. I was bringing back the 73 units that we were asked for at the last work session.
Well, I asked for a breakdown of several different stages of units, and I think Kelly did too, if I recall correctly, so that I don't see how we can make any kind of decision if we don't know what the comparative costs for the tenants are or the comparative cost to us. What are we going to base our decision on? I mean, I'd like to base it on data and facts rather than just how we feel about Phillips.
I mean, I'm not sure there was a majority board direction.
Apparently not.
To GR on that.
Yeah.
I still, and have always
I have the
supported that.
spreadsheet,
I
but-
would, I do think there's some points of conversation related to like the level of subsidy we want to provide and what that means for our capacity to do more housing projects, as well as, honing in on the cost to whoever owns, would own these as well. I mean, $900 a month is a lot on an HOA fee.
So if I could just jump in, we did anticipate, Francie, that the ask would be coming. Our last board direction was to plan to the 73 units. So we do have a spreadsheet that we can pull up if the board wants to examine the lever of the number of units to see how that impacts that final household cost on a apples to apples basis to what was presented as the 73 units. So we do have that. And so, but Kelly, to your point, and I think to what GR was saying, there are a number of levers, right? A number of decision points here. We've tried to break it down really to about 3 at this point, which is the number of units is one. Kelly, to your point, what is the subsidy level that we're targeting? And then 3, I may get this wrong, GR, so jump in, but I think it's the, who do you want to serve, at what and I think that is the second one that you're bringing up, like, what is the affordability level that we're trying to achieve in this project? And as you move those levers, right, it affects the other two. And so we have traditionally been starting at the number of units, but it doesn't have to start there. You can start at subsidy level. But if we could get direction, final direction on those three things, we can build this thing out. So
Okay. Patty, do you have a comment? Or I'll share that, first, my first reaction is, how many total units do we want? Seems too early to ask that question for me, because the subsidy level certainly is an important part. The assumptions that are being made, even to get to the numbers we've seen today, I think need perhaps more scrutiny from our board. And so it doesn't feel like a fair question, but I didn't expect you guys to be fair. You're doing your best, but this is really a tough thing, and it's very tough for me, because it seems like a lot of moving targets here. And even with Kelly, like the level of subsidy you might want could vary dramatically by the time this is built. And I don't have a projection on what that would mean, because what's fair and what's common and normal in Aspen or even in mobile home parks today might already be way over the top for people who are residents at Phillips. And so we have to decide, are we going to separate them out and subsidize them to a much greater extent than we would elsewhere? Or are we trying to bring it up to some sort of parity and equity with the rest of the rental community? I'm still wrestling with those questions. So when you ask how many total units do I want today, I don't think I can give you an answer today. I do know we've been given direction for 73 units. We've looked at those numbers, but I don't understand all the assumptions yet. And I don't know what my fellow board members are thinking in terms of what do we need to do in terms of subsidies. So I'm not there yet, but I appreciate the forward momentum. Steve, do you have a comment? Are you following any of this? Can you see it yet?
I forwarded him or sent him the slides.
Okay, so he's there. I don't know if my questions were, if you didn't understand what I just said, I understand, because I'm still formulating it as I ask them. If there's anybody who wants to.
So, Greg, I've been trying to get on to the Zoom meeting and haven't been paying attention that close.
Okay.
Going back and forth on this Zoom meeting link.
Well, I think you need to participate in this, so we should take note that it's unfortunate you're not here, but I'm not going to rush it.
You were sent the slides. Have you seen
You've been
that in your
emailed the
email?
slides? Yeah.
He didn't say that, though.
No, he didn't say that. Yeah, check your email. It would help me to go back and look at the assumptions again and have a conversation about subsidy levels, because maybe Kelly has a different idea or a threshold that you would not want to pass.
Well, I just,
I have the slides here.
Good.
We're on the affordability spreadsheet matrix sheet with the orange and green, if you're wondering where we are. I'm wondering if there's any way somebody could cue Steve on what page we're looking at. Maybe he'll figure it out.
Well, it's not in the packet, so we don't have page numbers.
Oh,
Steve, we are on page,
We're on slide 9.
slide 9, if they're numbered.
yeah, they are.
Okay.
Number 9?
Yep.
Okay, I'm on that page.
And let's go back and look at 8, if you don't mind. Oh, that was 8. Actually, this is the one I was thinking of. Sorry, this is 9. Thank you. Okay, so we've got the fixed cost of fixing the infrastructure, and then we have the cost of operations of the infrastructure, which is baked into everything. And then property management. I'm trying to understand all the numbers here. We want to only recoup 10% of our initial cost for buying it. And we expect a 25%, that's not an interest rate. That is, we intend to recoup 25% of the cost of the infrastructure.
Yes. So if our infrastructure cost is $8 million, then our recoup would be $2 million amortized over 20 years.
Got it. So we get $2 million back. Now, why are we choosing 20 years? Just out of for a, I always think of
That's a
30-year mortgages.
pre-standard calculation for amortizing different.
Infrastructure, stuff like
It's
that.
taking a little bit of an average of the life. You don't want to amortize it beyond the useful life. Some of the pieces of equipment are replaced prior to the 20 years. Some of it is going to last longer than 20 years. So it's a little bit of a conservative number, but it's to ensure that you might want to think about it as a capital reserve, right? That there's adequate capital reserves in place for replacement. Otherwise, we're going to be subsidizing again probably in the future.
Now, will the property management fee of $150,000 per year, is that averaged over 20 years, or do we anticipate that growing?
All of that grows.
It's all going to be,
Yes.
right. Okay, so we're going to recoup 10% of the property investment cost, 25% of the infrastructure cost, and that is, and the rent or the cost of living in these units is reflected. That's reflected in the cost of living in these units at these levels. We have a question regarding subsidy levels. Is this subsidy level within? I assume you created it because it's within reason or within the range, but is it something that? What were you thinking? What would you expect?
Well, so we're talking about 35 new units and an existing development. You know, we're not generally in the business of subsidizing the infrastructure of existing developments. You know, we threw in, $50 grand for Woody Creek to set up their own metro district to do that. You know, so I struggle a little bit with like a huge subsidy towards existing neighborhood. And with that in mind, like the cost for 35 new units is really expensive, particularly when there exists opportunity to defray that.
Such
more.
as?
Well, adding new units. I mean, there's opportunity there to do that. Not all sites would allow for that. You know, we're not site restricted by for the number of units in that regard. So, you know, so I'm not sure we're making the best economical decisions here. And I recognize that that's not the only, you know, thing to factor into these conversations. I mean, these are all starting numbers for someone's, you know, first month of reserves, which go up every year, as anyone who lives in an HOA has probably experiences. And, you know, based on current AMIs, we're talking about like category 2 to category 4, which I forget is like, I think 60% AMI to 205% AMI. So that's the household income that this pro forma supports. I'm not sure the total breakdown of numbers of category 4 units, category 2 units. Obviously that comes when we decide how much we want to subsidize per unit. We're talking about sort of a total subsidy here. You know, there's need at all those levels. In APSHA, we see greater need at the lower income. So, you know, I know Ashley's we're going to hear a whole wealth of information on Thursday at the Housing Forum about all this. But, That's what we observe in ABSHA at least. And so if we're trying to get at the heart of what is demonstrated need or avoid issues of having units that people won't want, we know lower incomes will do that, and that's just more subsidy from us. So I guess I would project
So can we put a number on that?
that. I mean, I can't help but like take the big picture view of, how impactful do we want to be on this big community problem of housing? How much do we want to deliver as a board and a county to trying to, chip away at that problem? I see 35 new units as sort of a real lost opportunity. Not to say we couldn't do more in the future, and we've talked about that. But we could also do more now when we have a problem now. I think accounting for just when the project is at its most expensive, which is when we first build it. So that's, I continue to think that we should be doing more here. And there's a lot of benefit to the community, to our own finances, to the individual households and their costs to do so.
Do we have, Francie, go ahead.
Yeah, I have some questions that are underlying this whole thing. I completely agree with Kelly, by the way. Also, I want to remind you that I talked to Kurt, who's going to be this new CEO at RAFTA. He said it wouldn't cost anything to run their Woody Creek bus down this road instead of turning later on and picking up people, so that we'd have bus service, more frequent bus service. I think it's every half an hour. He didn't think it would be any cost to us to do that. So, but obviously if we only hit the fewer units we have, the less likely RAFTA would be to do that. But it seems to me that we're assuming here that we are the only investors in this. And so that's never been our assumption. I mean, what about RAFTA and the school district and SKICO and the hospital and private businesses? And why are we doing this? Why are we setting this up as though we're the only ones that are doing this? I kind of don't understand that whole premise. Like when we talk about the percent of subsidies, well, the more investors we have, the less we have to get back out of it. And so that's one of my major issues, is what about everybody else that we've already talked about? And then I have a question, GR, about, is the 25 to 30% payback, that was just for your horizontal work? Is that what you're saying?
It would be, I said that for the horizontal at 25, and then the payback for the vertical somewhere in the 30%.
At 30%. So that's already a tremendous subsidy. Like, there's a 70% subsidy for the people who are going to be there. So I'm kind of confused about, so you're suggesting we're the only people, we provide 70%, I know that's not the bottom line, but that's what we're working on right now. We're providing 70% subsidy, and it's still probably not affordable for most people. But then we're looking at more subsidy. I guess I just need some more clarity about what this actually represents.
Can we get a number, an actual, what would be the optimal target number, Kelly? I don't know if you have the numbers in front of you, but what are you at? What would you think would be fair in terms of a subsidy to get to the target you're talking about?
In terms of like
Cost of ownership,
households?
cost of
Monthly
each
rent?
house, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure I can answer that with a whole lot of more than just a gut check. I would
Right, so,
say. But
yeah.
I just would, I mean, an extra $900 a month is a lot for a family that lives in an expensive
Community.
And
I put the 85 in the...
so,
Okay, so we don't know what the subsidy should be, but we know this is too high, according to Kelly. I don't think we're entirely clear on the cost of Francie, I apologize to you. I asked for and received a letter from Dan Blankenship and Kurt about the actual cost if we were to improve or increase the service.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a number attached to that. And it's a letter I've shared with John, but I don't know
Oh,
if
that's
you've seen.
subsequent to his letter to me then.
You're right.
Yeah, I wish you had
this
sent
is
that
what-
to me.
Well, I only got it yesterday. And I wanted to share with John first so they could correspond on it. I'd kind of like to know what our target is before we, throw out, are we trying to target number of houses, or are we trying to target a subsidy level?
And aren't they interconnected?
They're totally related, but if we can't find one, we're not going to find the other. And once the other one comes in, if we'd like everybody to pay $400 a month and we have to build 500 units to accommodate that, I'm not sure it'll fly. But I don't know where we are in the middle, and so that's where I am. But you wanted to speak. Go ahead, John.
So just a few things. One, I think maybe if the board does, I think what you're kind of getting at, Greg and Kelly, where I think I heard you going is, who are we trying to serve? And that is, what kind of household income levels. We can do feasibility from that. We have not really had that target. From the board, we brought different models and kind of we've tiptoed around, what's acceptable, what are you looking for? But that is a really good place to start because you do have a set of competing values here. That's why we're having such a hard time landing on a decision. But that's a reasonable place to start, in terms of household income and where that falls. And if there are some targets for what this board is looking for there, we can back into those with number of units. We also have physical constraints on the site, particularly now that we know more about debris flows and geologic hazards on the site and that sort of thing. There are more limitations and probably physical caps on the number of units. Any expansion of units would probably need to go into the fields on the sunnier side of the canyon, as it were. That was an area originally we were told to avoid, and we did. We went up into the hillside, which is actually better visually, but more complicated and expensive to build in. With the fields, we could probably get to 85, 90 units.
Yes.
Total. And so we can show you those numbers, and sometimes the board is better at editing from those sorts of things than originating just what that number wants to be. So maybe if we show you based on similar densities how it affects affordability, that helps the board
That would be
make that
really
discussion.
nice.
Yeah, I just would also know, when, numbers have changed drastically in 5 years, nothing's gotten cheaper, but,
No.
when we first looked at sort of monthly expense for the folks who currently live there, $784 is like three
Double.
factors,
Double what they're
above
paying.
what we looked at related to affordability for them. So I just,
Yeah,
need to be concerned about that.
and
And if they
five,
pay 774, that means we're subsidizing 600 a month
Yeah.
on that unit.
now
'Cause
the
it's
bo-
really 1,364.
The board did make that policy choice, so we did do that calculation 5 years ago as far as what did we estimate at cost at that time, and they've changed since then, how many units we would need to kind of maintain that same level of affordability. And that was a decision that the board made at that time, to reduce the number of units, which affects affordability. And that's how we ended up at the 73. And so I think being really intentional about that number right now and what you want it to be, because something's got to give. We either have to subsidize more, and once you get beyond the property and the initial infrastructure payback, then you're subsidizing operations. You're just subsidizing, you're committing to an ongoing and never-ending subsidy at that point, right? which is probably not, that's traditionally not where we've wanted to be with these developments. And so maybe if we run through just what the economies of scale does to the affordability balanced against the other values here, maybe that helps the board figure out which levers to pull.
I would like to do that, but I'm also going to ask you to let us know. I remember when we first bought it, what we were trying to do was rescue a 40-unit complex that was in danger of being scraped and disappeared altogether. That was the original intent. I want to compare the cost of fulfilling that only, just so I know the numbers. I don't expect us to do that, and we've already said we don't go to 73, but I would still love to see what is the actual cost if we have to do the bailout to bring this facility up to state standards and standards of decency and quality of life that we expect. I still want to see that number.
Yep.
And I want to compare it to the number at 73, and I want to compare it to the number at 95, and the number at 120, and a number at 100, and what sky's the limit? Because I think at some point we're gonna have to decide, well, what can we do? What can we afford to do? What can the community tolerate? And what if it's cheaper to get out of this with fewer number without thinking we're going to save a lot of money by going big? And I don't see that myself. You might have that answer, but I don't.
Well, fortunately, we thought that question might come up too. And so, GR, why don't you pull
Nice
up that
tee-up.
spreadsheet? And,
You can tell.
ultimately, Greg, we also need to understand cheaper for who. Because the initial capital costs, I think what you'll find would be cheaper, the fewer units that we have. But the per cost unit that homeowners would have to pay is higher. That's the challenge.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And it might mean the subsidy level needs to be higher on our part.
Just a quick thing, it wasn't 5 years ago, it was 3 years ago. I was here, and I wasn't here 5 years ago,
When we
Well,
first
we did
bought it.
when we did the
before.
73
Yeah.
units. When
I
that-
know.
Yeah, we bought it a
Just
long
We did
time.
that. We did a version before you came
Right.
on, where we had.
Karen
think it was a-
Kinnaman was the first presenter I remember.
That's
on
correct.
Phillips.
Yeah, on the, and we I think had teed up that we probably need about 116 units at that time.
Right. And then 3 years ago,
112.
I wasn't one of these people, but several people on the board wanted to cap it at 73 or whatever that number was. So anyway, okay, fine.
Are you?
I'm
He's teeing it
struggling
up.
a little bit
Thank-
technically
having
real
these
quick.
problems today.
I'm glad you anticipated that question because I have asked it before.
Well, that's why it was easy to anticipate.
Well, while we're waiting for these numbers.
Patty wanted to speak.
Oh,
Yeah, I
Patty.
want to get to the unit since we are, I don't know we're not paying attention to time, but just in case. I want to look at the stick-built versus modular opportunities we might have. I just need to throw this out here, looking at what we might be able to do to help Habitat for Humanity with their facility they're building in Rifle, which will also help BoCCs with their training opportunities for young people to get into an industrial field of some sort for employment. So I just think, John, we had talked about having some money available that we might be able to use towards helping with that facility in Rifle. So I just don't want that to be left out of the conversation, because I think it would be a perfect opportunity for us to partner and maybe get some of those modular, which are becoming very efficient as far as energy saving, and they'll be built locally, and I think that might be an opportunity for us.
Yeah, thanks, Patty. And that could, well, I'm going to buy GR sometime because I also want to come back to some of Francie's comments earlier too. But Patty, to your point, especially on the vertical, the stick-built construction, it can really change the pro forma to the positive. That will most likely impact partners that we bring to the table. Right now, we can't afford to do this under our current revenue stream. We couldn't even bond against our current revenue stream to do this project. And so, Francie, to your point, we are anticipating bringing other partners to the table, and have had preliminary conversations with a lot of partners who are interested. But there's always the next question. What are we partnering on, and what is the rough cost of partnering? And that we can answer at the 73 units now. We can answer at 85 units now, or GR is going to run through this, or at 0 additional units. Greg, we'll talk about that. But before we can thread together those partnerships and bring proposals back to you, and what our partners would want out of it, right? That's going to be the other side of this. It really would help staff to really be solid on, this is the project we're bringing forward, this is what we're asking you to partner on.
I get that, but it's, in the meantime, we're asking to make decisions on this as though we are the only partners. So how do we do that? How
No.
can we come up with a subsidy level if we don't know whether RAFTA's gonna put in $5 million, or SKICO, or, I don't see how we get to a,
The subsidy level does not change. The cost to build is the cost to build, and the number of units are the number of units. And, what we would have to do to accomplish the project is bring funding partners to the table.
right, but
Yeah.
how do we come up with a subsidy? The percent, of course, isn't gonna change, but the amount of our subsidy will change considerably. So if we have partners and we have more units, and so the price per unit goes down to, I don't know, with all of the costs, $1,000 a
Price
month,
for the county.
and we're subsidizing 30%, then that's a whole different number than if we're subsidizing a $4,000 unit. I mean, let's go on with some numbers, and I'll be quiet for a while. I'm just frustrated that the decisions we're being asked to make without seeing all the options. So let's see some more options.
Okay. So
Okay.
I can frame a little bit of some of what Francie said and a little bit of what Greg has said. Greg, you asked about what would be our ask if we kept at somewhere around 40 units. And with 40 units, our infrastructure costs don't change significantly. They might go down 10%, but
Right.
that's still a really big number. And so that's kind of the idea that goes into this. And so for 40 units, with that same kind of subsidy level, you'd be looking at somewhere at the, and so these bottom numbers are average, about $1,300 a month with all that subsidy going in, just to be able to maintain all of that system. At 73, we were looking at an average of $827 a month in fees. At 85, that goes down to $730. And at 992 units, that goes down to $681. And so the number of units, one of the levers you have to pull, that's what it looks like based on the number of units.
That's the operating costs that you
Those
put-
are all the operating costs and that 25% payback.
And, for each unit that was there when we bought this property, it was $154,762 to save those mobile homes that are there. We paid $154,762 per unit to save those. So that's also out there. Okay, so those are the operating costs, but the other costs, like that were on the next slide? did they-
So, luckily, I
Oh.
started building that stuff out too. So at 85 units, and I'm going to apologize. This is like my spreadsheet, so there's a lot of like notes and a double check on math that are here. So ignore some of the numbers.
Thank
but
you for sharing it.
The next slide. So that average cost, and then I took a percentage of that and applied that to each of that, so that the 4 bedrooms are paying more than the mobile homes. That looks like that goes down to just under $700 for a mobile home, or say a 1 bedroom. And that brought that, if you remember, the affordability number that we looked at is, sorry, I'm going to bounce around a little bit. I'm looking at the wrong screen, but 55,000 in the last spreadsheet. If we go up to the 85 units, that comes down to 51,000. So that's a 10%. That's a 10% swing by adding those units. And so if you move that lever with the number of units from 73 up to 85, you're bringing those affordability numbers down.
Understood.
That's
Thank you.
level one, isn't it, Kelly? Isn't that category one, $51,000?
I think so.
I think it is.
The mobile home piece was probably the hardest to
household
try
size.
to figure out with assumptions, just because I don't know what people pay on a unit now. Some are probably paid off. Some people probably pay, $800 or $1,000 a month on their ownership. It's averaged out in this pro forma at about $400 a month there, and then a few $100 for rent.
So that's ownership, their personal ownership costs could be average $400 a month, some nothing.
$400 to
some-
$600 is what this is based on.
Right, okay. I'm gonna, I have
Ownership of what?
no idea how to assume what their cost is. But then the rent on top of that was, you said a few $100s. Can you be more specific?
So this is built out here with a $600 total. So it would be, I assumed $400 on a payment and then $200 rent at the mobile home park. Lower the rent because now we have that HOA fee to pay for a lot of the other pieces of upkeep.
So the cost of the person who lives there is what, the third column?
So yeah, so this is like what we're assuming the total. We're looking at the 85 units right now, and so your total housing cost would range from $1,250 to about $4,300 a month.
And that's the cost of the actual property, not what we're expecting them to pay. Or is that what we're expecting them to pay?
What this is supposed to be a model of what they're spending on housing per month.
Okay,
And
sorry.
depending on how this is managed and how it is divided up, if some of those, say, 3-bedroom units, 3-bedroom duplex, maybe that's an ownership unit. So there's an assumption on what they were purchase it for, what that mortgage is, and what the HOA fee is, and that's what goes into that total, Greg.
Francie?
I have a question about the discrepancy between the fees and rates for a mobile home or a 1-bedroom compared to a 4-bedroom. That's a pretty small gap. A 4-bedroom is a lot more stuff. Wouldn't
Yeah.
it be a greater disparity there?
And it can be. We can. I just went. I calculated the average. I departed from the average a certain amount, and we could depart more.
I see what you're saying.
We're assuming that 3 of those bedrooms could be children or could be workers in the community.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that if I were paying $647 in fees for a 1-bedroom, and then I found out that that guy next door in that 4-bedroom house is only paying $100 more, I'd be sad.
I think often they're set up based on square footage. Right.
Yeah.
Everyone
Well,
has
he
the
said
same
it's just-
rate
he
times
just
the
did a
square
var-
footage of your unit.
Yeah, some of them are based on bedrooms, some of them are based on square footage.
Yeah.
And this isn't either of those. This is just
They-
you're doing a range. That
I
you
just
thought
did a
was
range so that
reasonable.
we
Yeah.
still landed with about
No,
an
I get that.
average. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Can we have Steve mute so we're not hearing all the activities that are going on in his
Knocking
household?
bottles around.
I couldn't hear that at all. What did you say?
He's doing laundry and flushing the
Oh,
toilet.
we don't know
and-
that. Yeah.
Cars coming in and out.
And so I haven't seen this entirely yet. It's going to take a little while to absorb it.
So essentially, Greg, what you're seeing is if you went from 73 up to, let me remind myself how we did the math. This is 92, so this is 85 units. You go down about 10%.
For the actual cost.
Yeah,
Right.
of what those HOA fees
Good.
are.
What if you go up 20%? I mean,
All right, so-
20 units
So,
instead of.
so if we went up to say 92 units is the other one that I did the math. So that total estimated fees are about 650 to 767 as a difference.
And the next block?
Well, and so I built out, and so that affordability went from, I forgot, it was the high 50s down to about 50,000. And then that range, all of these numbers come down, and we can
55.
spread them out, we can cluster them closer, but on average.
Or we can recoup more subsidy.
Or we can recoup more subsidy.
Yeah.
So if,
Hello, can you guys hear me?
There's an echo, Steve, but we can hear
Can you
you.
hear me?
We hear you.
Okay. If we did 94 units, what would the total estimated fees, which I presume would be the rent we're charging to the different units on page, I think it's page 9. Not sure what page that is now. So it's 784 to 933, and I think that's for 73 units. Now, if we did 94 units, what would those numbers be?
I love technology.
Did you copy that?
I actually did not, so I
said,
apologize.
What would
the
it be
numbers
at
be
94
94
units?
Units, what would the,
So I right now I have up for 92 units, so close. And the fees would range from about 650 to 767. The based on that slide that we were looking at earlier, that required annual income would be somewhere just shy of 50,000 a year at the low end and up over 172 per year at the high end.
So that still is a couple $100 more than they're paying now, and some people maybe wouldn't qualify who are living there now because their income is not,
Good idea.
not those who are retired living on a fixed income more or less. Is that right?
Yes, and again, I think it goes back to some of the questions that John had teed up earlier with who do we want to serve. And when I know some of those numbers, I can lock something in and work backwards a little bit. We can change some of the assumptions for sure.
But Steve, the board has consistently walked away from maintaining the current affordability by adding units, and that's been our conversation. So that is not something we've been pursuing at this point. Now, that would be a good policy decision for the board. If you're going to revisit that, then we need to know that that's the target. But we think the target's been set higher.
I want to make sure I understand what you just said. Sorry, you have to reiterate that. If you're going to walk,
So, I would agree that we're gonna need to raise the rents on everybody there. And if there is some hardship cases that we have to look at differently and subsidize them differently, maybe there's a way we can do that. But the only way to make the numbers work is to have people there pay more money. Unless we went up to way over 100 units or something, maybe we could make it affordable, and I don't think we wanna go there.
I want to. I think we should have considerably more units on there, and I think the density is still really reasonable if we had, if you take, how many acres is it?
It's a 60 plus acre lot.
Right, so if we had, just as an example, I'm not saying we should go to this number, but if we had 136 units, we're still giving a half an acre to each person. That is not considered high density in housing. So, so I would like to relook at how many units we have on there. I think it's, I think putting this much infrastructure in there for a limited number of people is a irresponsible use of our funds in terms of providing affordable housing in our community. And I think that probably we could just forget about Phillips, turn it into open space and trails, build something up at Snowmass's property at Aspen Village or somewhere else way more cheaply than it's gonna cost us down there. And so I think that keeping it at 73 units is not as efficient as we need to be in today's market.
What do the rest of the board members think about increasing to 92 or greater than 92 units?
Kelly?
Well, Steve, I was at 118 5 years ago. haven't budged a lot on that. But I would just respond to your comment, just preceding comment that, you know, trying to keep it affordable for the low-income folks that we know to live at this park and not change these numbers significantly means we'd have to charge more, create higher expense for any of the new units, which we can do, but I'm not sure that that's where most of the need in our community exists. And, I say that from sitting on the OPSHA board and watching the way that these lotteries take place, watching the inability for the city to bid, to sell high income units. We just have a lot of evidence that shows that we need to sort of keep these affordable at a middle income and at Phillips, a lower income household level. To do that with a low number of units is very expensive for us. And, I don't think it's the most responsible thing for us, and I don't think it seizes the opportunity that we could be.
Patty, do you want to weigh in?
Nope.
Steve, my concern is that even if we build 135 units or whatever number that was just tossed out, I'm not convinced this is the best bang for the buck, as we call it, for building affordable housing. When we first bought this place, it was a rescue operation of a 40-unit complex. Now, all of a sudden, it's the solution to our housing problems, and the only way we can make it pay is by making it a lot bigger. My concern, I'll reiterate, although I thought we were done with this conversation when 73 was settled on, and I agreed not to protest that, but I think our comprehensive plan says when we're going to build affordable housing, we build it close to or within the urban growth boundary. And I think we have options that we haven't looked at for doing that. And I want to look at those options before I vote for this. And let's see, I had one other thought there. I think that we have a community that didn't expect us to build a new village at Phillips Trailer Park. I would have voted against purchasing this had I thought it was going this direction. I don't know how the rest of the board would have felt then, but to think that we're building a new small town is how I'm going to frame this, because that's kind of what it will be, may not be what the plan our community has asked us to pursue entails. It doesn't make sense for community planning to be so far from transit, so far from the grocery store. It's 10 miles equidistance to Basalt or to Aspen to the grocery store, or to the schools. There's no school bus service there. RAFTA would actually need a subsidy to provide regular enough service there to make it work for transit. It's possible there are other options. Steve brought up something about Aspen Village, which we have not explored. On several occasions, I've introduced the idea of locations within the urban growth boundary, working with partners that could work. And I think one of the potential partners has revealed that they really want to work with us. Actually, two have. So I'm not sure this is the best use of the money for our money. I'm not sure we're doing any big favors to the residents down there, and I'm not sure we're going to make it affordable. But what we would be doing is breaking our own rules and the common sense rules of urban planning, which say build close to the jobs, build close to the urban growth boundary, build close to transit. We're doing none of those things here. So we're putting more people on the highway, and we have to build a lot of infrastructure to do it. So that is the essence of my resistance to this. It might be less expensive for us to fix what needs to be fixed at Phillips and walk away, or continue even a subsidy. I don't understand the numbers well enough yet to understand that, but it might be less expensive for the county, and then we could take the money we are thinking of committing to this and putting it into something where it makes better sense. That's where I am, and I'm stuck. I apologize for being stuck on this, but it was a huge compromise for me, knowing that the community didn't want 73, the neighbors certainly, and Woody Creek didn't want even 73 units there to go along with 73. Now I'm hearing it's going to go up. I'm not sure that improves the situation dramatically for anyone, but I do know it's going to make people upset. I'm upset about it. So, Steve.
Listening to the three of you comments, I would tend to agree with you more, Greg, that if we build 130 something or whatever, we would end up taking a whole bunch of the irrigated field. There'd be a whole bunch of bench above the ditch, the sagebrush bench, which would all be highly visible from the highway, and I think it would be probably ugly, would be the best way to describe it. And I know that there's other places we can build housing by Aspen Village, which are there on land set aside for affordable housing. There are opportunities in Aspen that have not been explored. So maybe we need to do all of the above, get partners doing these other projects, but I think the idea of going ahead and finishing the water system in the sewer plant, creating some spaces for making it safer for the residents who are there, maybe building the first row of stick built that we were talking about to get it up to 73. Beyond 73, I don't know if I'd be willing to go there right now without exploring, like Greg says, the other options we have available.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you, Steve.
We put too many people there, and it's on a narrow county road. I used to drive a school bus on there.
Uh-oh.
So that's where I am right now.
Thanks, Steve. We had a real audio problem, but I think the transcript picked it up pretty well, and I think I heard it, but it was pretty hard to follow. Thank you for that. Patty.
Yeah, I want to bring us back to why we bought this property. It was, yes, to keep it from being scraped and turned into a big free market mega mansions. At that point, 15,000 square feet. And we made that decision. We made that decision also because we felt that the members that lived there, the people who lived there, were a valuable part of our working community. We wanted to preserve that affordable housing opportunity there. That was what we did. We had in-depth discussions and came to the 73 total units. 3 years ago. We had broader discussions 5 years ago. We don't own the property over at Aspen Village. Now Snowmass Village owns it. It's part of a Wildcat land exchange. We have no control over that property. We have not spoken with the people at Aspen Village. Do they want another community next door to them when they're having septic issues there? I mean, there's issues everywhere. As far as the urban growth boundary, we still have not had that policy discussion. It was a policy that I did not support. We agreed as part of that policy that we would still look at opportunities to provide more affordable housing where there was existing affordable housing, which is what we have stood behind. We've given up opportunities closer to the urban boundary, such as the property we sold at the over behind Cozy Point. The property Aspen, Mass was purchased for housing. That became open space because it wasn't close enough to transportation or infrastructure. Every time we try and do something close to the urban growth boundary, there's issues with transportation and infrastructure. We have some form of existing infrastructure at Woody Creek. We have some form of transportation that would be enhanced, I think, with more units there. People depend on that bus service that goes to Woody Creek. People use that to get to the intercept lot to then make their connections. Because I talk to them a lot, and they really appreciate that opportunity to have that service. They wanted it expanded to service them more hours and be more consistent and more effective for them. So for us to now be saying, oh, let's not put housing there, let's fix it up so those trailers can exist in debris flow and floodplain. We're going to have to remedy those situations if we do anything besides the septic and the water. So there's already investment we've made there. So for us to now be saying, oh, maybe we should turn it into open space and build everything over at Aspen Village, I find offensive to all the work that we've done and all the discussions that we've had. You know, we need to just figure out and stick to our word and say, we decided on 73 units with the possibility in the future with phasing it to put more units there. I know Woody Creek doesn't want anything, but generally Woody Creek doesn't want anything. That's kind of a given, and I understand the nature of the beast there. That's how it is. But if we want to provide affordable housing, we're going to have to make sane decisions based on as much information as we can get. We have to listen to the neighborhood. We have to listen to the whole community, and we have to get something done, because we're not getting things done because we keep going back and changing our minds. Sometimes because we get information that is new, sometimes we just change our minds. So I would like to see us stay a course and make some decisions here again and get something done there, because we've got people who are living there who need water. We've got septic that's in the wrong land. We've got debris flow. We've got wildfire issues. We need to do something there now. Thank you.
Thanks, Patty. Okay.
I'll respond to that. Basically, I agree with you. I mean, talking about not doing it there and doing it at Aspen Village is just like one other thing to look at. But, and I certainly don't think we should go backwards from 73, because the cost to us and the other taxpayers and probably the people who live there is just insane. To put in a whole new wastewater treatment plant and everything we'd have to do there for 40 units just doesn't seem to make sense to me. So I still stand by more units. I agree we need to move forward. And, you know, I stand by more units because if you look at something like, Lumberyard, I mean, God, you talk about density and the impact on people and traffic and everything. I don't think this would have anywhere near that kind of impact. And I only used the 136 number, so I could divide it by 68. You know.
She had a mathematical decision there.
But, you know, I would love to see us consider going up a little bit. Doesn't mean that, you know, it's the end of the world if we don't, but I do think it would help the affordability of the people there. And I think that by the time we put in all that infrastructure, it makes sense to serve more units.
Thank you, Francie. I would like to move on. I don't feel comfortable giving you a number right now of units. It seems as if Patty says let's not change anything, let's do what we committed to do, but I don't think she meant to stay at that number of units. I'm not sure. Francie wants more, Kelly wants more.
What were you going to say, Patty?
We can, you know, I'm comfortable with the 73. You know, but we did talk about phasing in the future, that if we build it and if we could design, we could even add on to the septic, is my understanding. So it wouldn't be this huge, oh, we got to scrap the septic and build a whole new one. It could be designed to go up for more units. And when we have the money and the funds and the community support again, it would make sense there, I think. But it doesn't mean we have to build 93 units, 92 units, 94 units, or right now, but we can keep that in mind, that this is an opportunity for phasing up.
Great, thank you. That's a little clearer. Kelly?
Hi, Greg, I have a question for GR. Has there been any schematic drawing of what 92 units would, where they would be located? Or where the extra 19 or so beyond the 73 units would be located?
Essentially, we would have to program into the upper field, moving towards Upper Valley. Yeah, I think we can fit about 10 to 20 units, depending on the density that we chose for that location.
So by upper field, you mean the irrigated part below the ditch or the sagebrush part above the ditch?
Between the ditch and Lower River Road.
Irrigated
And the
part.
county road?
Right.
Okay. trying to envision what that would look like.
Steve, I'm thinking we're being asked for a number here. Don't know if you copied that. I'm going to go to.
So, I mean, I'm good for the 70, Greg, I'm good for the 73. I'm just trying to envision, because the other 3 board members really want to go to a higher number. I'm trying to envision what
She's speaking for me.
92 units would look like there, where it would be. So thanks, GR, for that.
Yeah,
He can speak for me.
Okay, Patty may disagree with that.
Yeah, I said the possibility of phasing in the future. I didn't say we're going to go at, definitely in 5 years we're going to build another 200 units out there. I said we have the opportunity to reconsider that in the future based on community need and community input.
So Patty's at 73 now, Steve. And we can't make a board decision today. We're just trying to give direction to come back to us.
Yeah.
Kelly.
Okay. I'm trying to figure out how to get the last hour and a half of Patty's life back to her.
Thank
Do
you.
we have to answer the questions of how much subsidy and who do we want to serve today, or can we chew on that as we bring in partners for this?
Yeah, I mean, clearly, the subsidy question can be made as you see what partners come to the table. I think in order to bring partners to the table, I got to have a number of units.
Yeah,
I
no, I
got to
get it.
have the number of units, or I
Gave
can't
it to
have
you.
that conversation. And so if it's at the 73 now, that's fine. We'll go with that, and then we can build what partners are willing to come to the table under what conditions. That will start to define then what that financial pro forma is and where you want to pull between affordability levels. And they're going to start to get bounded here, right? Because the infrastructure, the incremental cost of infrastructure moves more slowly than the
Right.
right? That's the
And can we keep in mind the opportunity, to maybe look at what we can do to help with some other dollars I think we might have available to contribute to getting the rifle modular plant, quote unquote, up and going, because I think that might be a great opportunity for us.
I love the idea of looking for cheaper ways to build the housing, Patty, but I don't want to tie us to subsidizing a new endeavor in rifle. There may be even better options than that out there, and I think we should certainly explore them. But
Yeah, but this helps with the BoCC programs too, which we've been trying to help
yeah,
with,
that's
so-
not what we're talking about here today, though.
Can I
as
get
much as I
some-
support that.
Yeah.
Can I get some clarity, John, on when you approach other people, is there any way you could approach them to say, we're going to design for 72 with a potential of adding 20 more units? Is there any way that you don't think anybody would go for that?
Well, I guess, yes, I think the next question I'm going to get that I don't know how to answer from this discussion is, when will those other
Well,
20
of course,
units come
yeah.
on board? And so I think I
73.
think what I would be approaching folks on is an initial build out at 73. That we are anticipating. Right now, the board is still working towards it. It would help to know the desired subsidy numbers because it's easier to build a pro forma for our partners, right? But I think we can give a range of what we're trying to recover on property costs. I think, your contribution is going to be in subsidizing the property and subsidizing some level of the horizontal infrastructure. And those numbers don't have to be totally locked in. We'll probably go with a range somewhere around what GR has initially proposed, if the board's comfortable with that, and then see what partners we can thread together.
And when
So
you
with
say that, you're saying 70%. Like we're going to subsidize 70% of the project. We don't know what that means per unit yet.
This is our
but
starting point. We'll have a pretty good idea what it means per unit at that point.
I just
Yeah.
mean like maybe we'll have some units that we subsidize at a higher level than other units. That we
Yeah.
Should
So
make sense
would the
for lower
other
income.
partners potentially be subsidizing as well, or I'm confused.
Yeah, so there's going to be a total subsidy that we have to achieve, right, in order to reach the affordability levels we gave you. We can't afford to pay that whole subsidy. So really what we're doing is asking partners to come in and help us pay that subsidy.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then would they get a proportion of the rent? Well, we don't know what the ownership would look like, whether they would own units or sections or just be partners, or we don't know.
Right, right. And there are lots of ways we can structure it, like we did with Basalt Vista. Do we, create more of a limited liability kind of situation? Do we have a different kind of partnership? Are
And
we
that's a good
having
template
folks
for us to
buy?
use.
Yeah. Are we asking folks to, buy in blocks? We'll work that out, because part of what I need to understand from our partners is what their interests and needs are and how they start to blend with helping us fund this project and our goals. And right now we bought this with impact fee dollars. And so it's got to be towards workforce. And then I imagine our partners, we have an interest in making it generally available, as well as probably grabbing some for our own employees, right? Most of our partners are probably going to have an interest in housing their own workforce. Some might have a more general interest. So we'll thread that together and bring it to you. But kind of waiting, one, to make sure we understood what the final costs were, which it took a while in the geotech and such to do that analysis on debris flow. We have that now. I did know there was some discussion amongst board members about did we land on the right number, and that was part of the conversation today. So yeah, we'll thread that together and come back.
One more question about the subsidy. So if we're providing 70% subsidies of 44,000, we're subsidizing like million. We're talking about 32 million. But if we have partners at half, then our 70% subsidy looks a lot different. It looks more like 12 million. That's
Well,
why I'm saying,
It's our share of the subsidies.
To
what you're
us,
talking
but somebody's got to pay that full subsidy. That's the rub. Otherwise,
Right, but we,
the person living there is.
yeah. It's dependent on how much money we put in compared to somebody else, or what we're going to have to pay, what we can afford.
Can I ever say it a different way, I think?
Yeah,
Let's see if I
please.
have it right. Like, you're saying if we raise $44 million, then we don't pay anything and the people there don't pay anything, right?
From
But-
outside.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
like that's what you're trying to get at.
Yes,
right?
I'm
We
trying
don't
to
know
get
we
at
don't
it,
know what
yeah.
we're raising. Like right now, John's asking us, what are we raising to?
Yeah.
So if we're raising to 32 million, with some portion of that being ours,
Yeah.
dependent on what the whole package looks like.
and then we gotta figure out where to get our portion.
So are we settled on 73? Because I would
We
prefer to
settled on
have it higher.
73 a couple of
And
years ago.
I know, but now we're
So that's where
relooking
we
at that.
still
So
are until
I'm
we
just
change
wondering whether there's any impetus to change that. I know Kelly and I would like it to be higher. I thought Steve wanted to, but he sounds different today than.
I'd like to keep it at 73 with and explore what additional phases in the future could possibly be. I don't want to rule that out, but I think right now I want to stay at 73. But I also want us, with sincerity and tenacity, look at other options in the community, and I'll bring some to you, because I'm not convinced this is the best use of the money, and we may be able to do lower cost housing elsewhere with partners. And I'm not convinced we've looked over and turned over every rock. In fact, I'm sure of it. And we'll have that discussion and we'll bring that back.
Can I just respond to that? I don't
Please.
disagree with you, and 100% we need to turn over every rock, but we still have all this cost related to the mobile home park that we own.
Yep.
That doesn't go away. That is the sunk cost upon which we're also trying to leverage an opportunity. So it's not a zero sum. Like finding something new isn't a zero sum for Phillips, right? Like there's still a whole boatload of cost associated with Phillips.
With the current
Yeah,
plan,
yeah.
There's a famous saying, if you're in a hole, stop digging, right? And it seems to me, I'm not sure we're ever going to get out of the hole. And so I'm
That maybe.
That's my concern. So that's, I think you have enough direction to go at 73 and to seek partners and figure out, they may come back to us and say, no way, you need to build more. But that would be really great information to hear from them. Do you guys have what you need?
And more.
And more, and an earful.
Thank you.
Thank
GR,
you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your work on
I know
this.
it wasn't an
I
easy
appreciate it,
task,
and I
but
appreciate
thank
you answering my questions. Thank you. We're 42 minutes behind schedule. I want to apologize to Levi, and I want to get us back on track. Does anybody need a couple minutes, and then we launch back in? No? Nobody needs a break? Okay, we're going to stop this now and move on to legislative update.
We're gonna move on to what the governor wants us to do. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, GR. Take a break.
Great job, GR.
I'm gonna watch his video again where he's like scooting through trees. I'm like, oh my God, he almost hit that tree.
What
Sends me-
video? What do you mean?
He sends me all these Instagram stuff
Of his ski exploits.
skiing.
Yeah.
He's an awesome skier.
The
Ice
governor
jam.
does?
No,
GR.
Oh.
I want to see,
He has had to replace knees on
I want to
occasion.
see video of his dancing.
Oh yeah, we have an ice jam release.
Well, really?
Oh, we do?
Where?
Snowmass Canyon
Oh, yeah, I just got it too. Snowmass Canyon to Carbondale.
to Carbondale. Makes
Just
me
an
nervous
ice dam.
when my son's out
It's
fishing.
anticipating an ice dam break. If it warms up, though, right? It won't break. It won't break till it warms up.
They say they're doing a flood warning for the rest of the week because of
Wow,
ice
okay.
jams. And they closed the Basalt pedestrian bridge the other night at 7-Eleven. I have a feeling it was
Really?
For an
Wow.
ice jam?
pending ice jam. That bridge is low and it's susceptible to
That looks like
ice.
one of
Ice,
those
susceptible
issues.
to ice.
Steve, are you still with us?
Oh, yeah, the yogurt or the panna cotta. Yeah.
All right,
I make panna cotta.
we got the
if
date.
you
We're
want it.
good.
Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. Okay, thank you. Welcome, and I apologize again for that, that you had to sit there for 45 extra minutes listening to that.
No problem at all.
We're making sausage.
I see.
Welcome. If you identify yourself and go from there.
My name is Levi Borst. I work as a management analyst in John's office. And in addition to other duties as assigned, a big part of what I've been working on is legislative tracking.
You're good.
Lean in, Levi. Lean in.
Sorry.
Can we go back to your title? What is it again?
Management analyst
What
is
does
the
that mean?
title. Well, it means analyzing management.
So you spend your time analyzing John and
Oh, no.
Analyze. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, so it is within this career track. It is a pretty common title, kind of a introduction to generalist management, and then it tends to step up. This is a position Kara came into after being a best and brightest intern.
Okay.
And so it gives Levi an opportunity to help us analyze both policy and procedural kind of issues throughout the organization, make recommendations either on policy positions, like is going to happen today, and or management gets full view of the organization, and maybe he'll want to go into generalist management someday, and maybe we'll scare him off. I'm not sure which yet.
Sure,
Okay,
exactly.
thanks. Thank
After
you.
that Phillips discussion.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, John.
Yeah.
So before I get into this, I'd shared these slides with Steve just in case he's having trouble. Steve, are you able to see those? Or get onto the Zoom, whichever's working.
Rosa, is he still there? Can you tell?
Yes, Levi, I can see them.
Great. All right, so I'm here for a couple reasons. One, just to sort of talk about what's happening at the state legislature since the session opened last week. Kind of touch on what we don't know, what we think we might know, and what we want to know. So obviously a big part of that drive is dealing with you all to see where policy positions lie, what you want to know more about, where we want to work on coalition building, and how we can spend our time making sure we, I guess, protect ourselves or advance our interests. So as a part of that, at the end of this, I would ask that we figure out, hopefully this is just the first of many check-ins that I have with you all as we go through the session. So this is just number one, and then we can set up how best to check in going forward. So as I mentioned, the session began January 10th, and 150 pieces, just under, have already been introduced between the House and the Senate. So to put that in context, last year, I think it was 474 pieces of legislation the governor signed, which, depending on who you believe I've heard, is the second most in the nation. I don't know who won, but
That's a lot.
that's a lot.
It's crazy. It's more
So I've got a rumors
way before day.
and then city and county organizational priorities spreadsheet. I think I'd like to come back to that and just sort of jump into, I've got that at the end as well, just sort of jump into some of the big ticket items that I know were a big concern in the last session. And then when we get into the spreadsheet, if there are any follow-up questions you all have, you can shout them out, and I'll answer as best I can. Okay, making sure Steve didn't have something.
He'll yell at us. Go ahead.
Great. So obviously property tax is a big concern that will come through the legislature this session. I have not heard even a breath of what they're working on yet. So before we get too worried about questions that I don't have answers to, I'll just put that one to bed for now. And then, of course, another big concern we had was a lot of the land use, zoning, the 213 issues, and just the scope of all that legislation. So we expected to see anywhere 6, 10, 12 different bills come out of 213 that would kind of chunk that apart and bring it back to us this session. One of the first that I guess I'm prepared to touch on is the ADU issue. In 213, as I remember, it was basically use by right anywhere residential zoning was allowed, any place. The new version, it proposes it as a use by right in metropolitan planning organizations and municipalities greater than 1,000. So this bill hasn't been introduced yet. This is all just kind of rumor. So for us, I guess this means it could potentially be an opt-in, but it would not be mandated, basically overriding our local land use or anything like that. As I remember the top of my head, the fiscal note was 15 million on this. And so for organizations, MPOs and munis that participate, I guess they would have to. That's for reimbursement of fees, for application fees and processing fees, as well as providing some low interest subsidies to people who are looking to build on their homes. Because of course, if you get a HELOC or something like that, it's a little cost prohibitive right now with interest rates to build an ADU on your unit. So
Tell me
again,
the 15 million number.
Yeah,
That
what
was,
is that?
I didn't follow that.
I think that was the fiscal note attached to the bill drafts that I've seen, and that's to reimburse fees and provide low interest funding to homeowners.
To build ADU
To reimburse fees.
deed restriction or employee
I
requirement?
think
or-
that's part of.
Well, and that's part of the stakeholder meeting that's actually tomorrow. This is Amabile is the one bringing this bill forward, and
Aspen High School graduate,
I didn't know that. Wow.
grew up with her.
Well, this will be a great.
She's forgotten.
This would be a great question.
She's
Where's she
forgotten.
out of now?
Boulder.
So that's definitely a question that's come up, of course, is do local municipalities have the ability to deed restrict new ADUs? So we run into the problem here that people construct ADUs and then they sit vacant, or they're rented for a fee that doesn't really get at what we're trying to get at when it comes to the employee housing crisis. So more to follow on that one. I refuse to answer because I don't know.
Okay.
And,
Just want to make a note that if we want to reach out to her, I
Cool.
could do that.
Great.
And we just need to know what we want to tell her. And I'll work on that with you today, whenever. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank you. And so for right now, this would not be a use by right in unincorporated because we don't have any MPOs and we're not a municipality greater than 1,000. Of course, the hazard is, as with all these bills, is that they amend and modify as we go through sessions. And if that's the case, I just want to be fully informed as to how best to advocate if that happens. So at least for right now, I don't have an answer to the deed restriction question. One of the drafts I saw did have a component that could limit short-term rental use of ADUs. So that would be a positive thing. Obviously, if somebody builds an ADU and then goes to STR it, that doesn't really solve our problem either. Any other questions on that? Sorry, I'll try to get you back on
No,
schedule.
more to
It's a
come.
lot of picking up to do.
I will say it would be helpful to understand going into our association meetings, if this board feels strongly about weighing in on policies that don't directly affect the county, but may just be good policy. You know, that comes in, I think, more for CCAT than for CCI. But just to keep those in mind, because then if they come up for a vote at CCAT and we're like, we don't want to weigh in because it doesn't affect us, it's helpful for Steve and I to know that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. The next, I guess, proposed issue is transit-oriented communities. I think it was TOD in the last section, development, and now we're using the word community because it's different.
I know, I tried looking at, what is TOC?
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. I should have
That's okay.
Table of
explained all the
contents.
acronyms.
I figured it out.
So this also applies to MPOs, again, which we don't have any of. This centers around MPOs developing neighborhood goals of affordable housing development. So that can be horizontal infrastructure, cost of building, things like that. And the fiscal note on this, I believe, I want to say 65 million was the note tied to this. And I think one of the hazards I saw here is the HUTF funding is the stick the state is using to encourage MPOs to develop these neighborhood goals, basically saying that if they fail to do so, the HUTF funding could be withheld.
What is that?
Highway user transportation fee. I think Pitkin, we got 1.1 or 1.2 million dollars over the last year. Again, this doesn't specifically apply to us, but one of the concerns that gets voiced throughout a lot of the different organizations is that if the state starts to use HUTF funds as a mechanism to compel compliance, at some point that could affect us. So that's an evolving discussion about how concerned do we really want to be about that. I think there needs to be some stick, and the discussion is what else would it be if not that. So that's just kind of out there in the wind for now.
So they want to turn it into an incentive rather than, they'd probably like to see it as an incentive, but
Well, that's a great point. Almost all of the legislation, at least as it applies to us, is incentive-based. It's not preempting our codes, which is a pretty big relief compared to last year.
yeah.
And I detached the strategic growth order from the governor, as well as our responses, and you'll see those pop up. I just did that for kind of context. You'll see some of those themes evolve throughout this session, and it is very incentive heavy, which is great.
Great, thank you.
Moving on, strategic growth, and this is a big unknown. There are two competing bills out there. I shouldn't say competing. There are two proposals out there, neither of which have been made official yet. They both revolve around some DOLA requirements, local needs assessments, things like that. But in the draft language that I've seen, it doesn't specifically mandate who's doing what. It's all so vague as to, is it MPOs, is it municipalities, is it I just need more information to speak intelligently on that. I assume these two bills are similar enough that we'll get one bill and they'll combine forces on that, and we'll just kind of have to stand by for more information. I'm sorry I don't know more, but
You
I
can,
do have-
yeah, go ahead.
No, are
I
you
was
sure?
I was just gonna say, you'll keep us in the loop with an email if, you don't need to present at a meeting, but you know, if something comes up, we'll be in the email loop on that if it's significant.
sure.
Francie?
So these two bills will be in response to the executive order?
These two bills, only in part of it, they'd be in response to basically the strategic growth,
Two-
planning,
213.
needs assessment, that part of 213.
Okay.
So again, I don't know if it's mandated or what it does. Just in the gossip that I've heard, we're already doing most of this anyway.
Right.
So with any luck, it's kind of low impact, but I don't want to commit to that and have it be otherwise. So sorry, I don't know.
Well, on the one hand, it's kind of nice to see the state taking a huge interest in ADUs, transit-oriented communities, and strategic growth ideas where we actually create plans that make more sense than what we've been doing. So
Well, and also,
I'll be optimistic about this.
so far I am too. I'm cautiously optimistic. And I also like that it still maintains some level of local input where
That's
we
what I was
can,
gonna say.
Right.
where we
Very
can make
important.
sure this is going to work the way will work best for us. Obviously, what's happening in Westminster, Jeffco, Adams, Denver, it's not the same discussion as is happening here with ADUs and TOCs and things like that. So I think this is great, and that if we can apply it to best suit us, it's really positive.
Well, I think that's what came out of 213 was, wait a minute, the state, you're planning for us in our backyard without understanding us in our backyard. So hopefully this will help flush some of that out, don't you think, Kelly?
Let's hope.
Yeah, I mean, I think the governor has still said recently that local government zoning is a problem. So I don't, there is a bit of a play of like, he wants cover to have some sticks.
Right.
In all of this.
Right.
And they're trying to work
We need to
out
keep an eye on that.
what that.
Wait till
you know,
Denver-
and-
wait
and
till we
some
go to
of it is
Denver and start doing their
with the
planning.
TOCs, I think, what did you say, 65 million? I mean, that's like nothing
That's
for
chicken feed.
community, for like communities like Broomfield, which have done good high dense development, and RTD does not serve it and isn't serving it and isn't paying to serve, so there's those tensions, I think, too.
Cautiously optimistic.
Yes.
What's next?
I only mentioned turf irrigation because it was part of 213 and was buried in there. There were all sorts of strange things. New construction, development of government property, basically non-essential, non-functional turf. It's a water conservation effort, which I'll just keep moving.
Actually, if you wouldn't, I would appreciate it. I think that's a huge thing. So is this like regulation of new construction?
Yes.
The turf irrigation only?
Correct.
So when you go to put in your building permit, it's gonna have limitations on how many acres of bluegrass you can have or something like that.
Or what kind of grass?
Yeah.
Non-functional, and the initial drafts of this, the initial draft that I've seen is that it applies to government buildings, not to
Oh.
residential.
Oh, okay.
I think you can still have non-essential, non-functional bluegrass at your house.
I think it might be a start leading to that.
I mean, is kids playing flag football a functional use of lawn? It'd be pretty complicated to figure that out.
Great
Okay,
question.
yeah, let's keep
Thank you.
moving. I want to keep you up behind schedule.
Occupancy limits, this was largely tailored at, I would say, college communities that had, people living together. As long as it's not a safety risk, they want to remove occupancy limits to promote density near schools and jobs and things like that. It's a fairly PG sort of measure. The statewide transit was also part of 213, and they're looking to establish a committee to explore statewide transit passes, to come up with some proposals of how that would look. Free youth fairs to encourage, juvenile ridership where school buses maybe don't serve or don't serve often enough. And then ozone reduction acts during high peak ozone times during summer to increase ridership. So not a lot of impact there. It could ultimately, I think, provide some grant dollars available to RAFTA if they're providing free ridership for juveniles. But that remains to be seen.
Can I?
Go ahead, Patty.
On the occupancy limits, that may be okay if you're on a septic. I mean, you're on a, municipal septic system, sewage treatment. But for us who have, issues because people aren't connected to that infrastructure, we limit, like with our STRs, you can only rent out so many beds because of what your septic system can accommodate. So that's something we might want to, because we would hate for that to happen here after we have issues with overloading their septic systems.
There were all sorts of exceptions at the end of that language that spoke about safety concerns. I don't know if septic or water infrastructure, sewer
just to keep
infrastructure
an
was
eye
part
on.
of it, but I can get back to you on that.
Thank you.
Regarding the transit, a statewide transit pass is a great idea. I wonder how often it would make a difference for our valley or with RAFTA when the network gets built out more, maybe. But certainly the biggest impact RAFTA could receive would be funding for fare reduction or no fare seasons like Denver was doing. And we tried to do, but we simply didn't have enough drivers. But it's good to keep an eye on that, and I'm hoping that someday RAFTA can establish a no fare system. It's just we don't have the capacity to carry them all. Like today, it was standing room only. So we'll need to grow the RAFTA bigger before we can offer free service.
Exactly right.
That'll require help. Thank you.
It'll require housing.
Housing, help, funding.
We have this trailer court
drivers,
we
yeah.
could.
Yeah, we could build it. Yeah, there you go.
Oh, don't drag me into that.
Yeah.
So
right.
some other interesting topics. A bill has been introduced about short-term rental tax classification changes. And I know we may not have the biggest footprint here of STRs, but it's always kind of interesting to see what's happening. The idea being, as proposed, anything that's rented greater than 90 days in a short-term capacity as defined, less than 30-day rentals, would be basically you'd be taxed at commercial lodging as opposed to residential. A bunch of exceptions here too, of course, if it's a primary residence,
On-site.
yeah, on-site,
management.
all the things like that, then you still pay the residential. This has super strong opposition from realtors, from VRBO, from Airbnb, as you might imagine. This is taking a lot of heat. I know the Speaker, McCluskey, and Senator Roberts both said they would not support this bill in its current form. So who knows what the amendments might look like. I don't know if they want a bigger cap, a smaller cap, maybe the 180 days primary residence cap. Who knows? So we'll stand by for more information on what's coming there.
Did you say that if it's your primary residence, then you're exempted from this?
Correct.
Yeah, there's a lot of stakeholdering going on about this bill right now. I would, there has been a request for us to model what the conversion of STRs from residential to commercial would look like in Pickens County. Because it would address, it would capture everything in Aspen and Snowmass. So regardless of our number of STRs, since we're the ones that do property tax assessment, it would capture all the STRs in the whole county. And I don't know if I can ask John if we can give direction for staff to at least find an outer bound on that. It's hard, it would be hard to know right now, like which STRs have rented more than 90 days, but we could work with the municipalities to understand
bet they
which
have
are
some records.
STRs
Yeah.
and which, so what would that look like at the most upper limit? Is that okay?
Yeah, we can do that.
They should
Okay.
have the information based on the tax they collect, right?
Well, for the municipalities, I would think so, and just some of our data research tools that we're using for compliance, I think we might be able to draw that down. Karen? Maybe?
Alex,
I mean, I just thought that we get the the addresses in the city and the addresses in Snowmass and our addresses, and then look at what those would look like at a 27% rate rather than a 6.7%.
And how would we determine which ones are private residences?
I don't know.
So-
That
That's
would
why
be-
it's just
that
like an
would be
outer.
tricky.
That'd just be
Well,
kind of a ballpark.
the other thing you have to control for is who would be incentivized to go right under that limit to avoid.
Yeah, exactly,
The
89 days.
taxation.
In
yeah.
gaming the system?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I will say, I don't think that this bill is gonna pass in this form at all. It's probably gonna be more of like, what data, like a data bill, like what data do we need so the assessors might implement something like this in the future.
And of course, this bill requires basically some kind of a database that tracks under these standards. And there's talk of making that a state database, and we guessed how that would go. And I think it's got a lot of problems as it is, but it's out there and it's interesting. And some communities are really interested in advocating for this, and others less so. So it's out there.
Well, let's keep monitoring it, and let's move on to the next, the RETF.
Yeah,
Real
I
estate
forgot to introduce that.
Transfer
that as
fee.
well. Real estate transfer fee.
Fee.
This one is pretty interesting. I think it's been something we've been involved with just about since the ground level, at least in this session. And the idea being is, is that exactly like it says, that it is a real estate transfer fee. And this is a permissive measure that the legislature would permit local governments, local cities or counties who don't already have a RET, real estate transfer tax, to impose a fee on transferred real estate. So it leaves it to the local jurisdictions to define boundaries of that. So if it passed and we wanted to say deed restricted employee housing units are exempt from this because that's the whole point of collecting the fee, right? Or under a certain dollar amount, or however it would look, it gives a lot of control to how local governments implement the fee. So the fee is collected, and then it has to be tied in what's called the reasonable nexus to the impact that it's creating, or that the transfer of real estate is creating. So it would have to be for employee housing, because of course each transfer of real estate, you could argue, makes real estate less attainable for people on the lower end of income. So as it stands now, draft bill language is complete and has been forwarded through the governor's office and sent on to the AG for basically a ruling as to whether or not it's going to pass muster or not. So we have another meeting tomorrow to hopefully hear back on what the AG and the governor's office think.
I'm hoping to meet with Senator Will when I go to Denver at the end of the month. He wants to touch base with me, so I'll get some more info before I go down
Great.
there.
Great, thanks, Patty.
On this,
Yeah, we're trying to get that bipartisanship support going.
yeah, I'll probably see him on Saturday at the
Oh yeah, at the
Cattleman's.
steak dinner.
Yeah, well, no, the banquet's actually in February, but the meeting is Saturday.
Yeah.
Levi, you've got wildfire left. How many more pages do we have?
Just a couple.
Okay, let's keep flying here.
Okay.
Thanks.
I only put Wildfire Resiliency Board in that I know that there's a lot of community discussion about this. Whatever recommendations or basically standards that come out of that have some really very real ability to affect us here as we get into this interface. So I haven't even heard a breath of any rumor of what they're discussing or what they've decided, but I just wanted to put it up here to make note that it's something I'm paying attention to, and I know it has pretty big implications for us. So
And when we go to talk to Senator Will, this should be part of that, I hope. And the insurance, the ability of people to
Yeah.
insure their homes is front and center, because home value, home ownership, insurance costs are all tied to that. If you can't insure your property here, you can't sell it.
I think that was a Bill Perry was promoting the
Right,
insurance thing.
he talked
Yeah,
about,
yeah.
it'd be nice to know what if he's
I'll make a
developed
little
that.
list for him.
That'd be great. Thank you. All right.
oh boy.
Rumors.
Yeah, rumors. We'll see if my links
Well,
actually.
if they're like really
Compelling.
Compelling rumors. If they really are just like useless rumors, don't bother for now.
The whole spectrum. So I only open
We get to
this.
judge that on our own.
You mean,
I
Hey,
only
I'm
open
running
it
the
for
clock
open
here.
discussion if
you
a
mean
couple
Swift
reasons.
and Kelsey doesn't get it?
Just to kind of show what's been out there, a spreadsheet's been built. People are just dumping things into it, just as a place to dump them. I can share this link
Great.
with you
Oh,
if
great.
you need it, if you
Yeah.
like it. And then, of course, if there are other things on any of your all minds that I've missed or that are interesting to you that you'd like me to track, I want to hear about those as well.
Well, the insurance and wildfire risk thing is pretty high on mine. Okay, and that's it. This is it here.
This is it, and this is a working document, so apologies.
Can you send this? You'll send this to us.
Absolutely, I
Right.
can share this link with all of
That'd be
you.
great, thank you.
I don't want to try to parse it right now, but it
Nope.
looks like it's rich. Quite
It
rich.
is very robust. We don't need to go through that. I think I've touched on the ones that my perception were kind of most glaring, but I want to make sure to leave space for whatever all burning questions are on your mind that I can research and get back to you with.
Burning questions that we haven't discussed already? Steve, anything out there you're hankering to put Levi on? While he's forming a response.
The only thing I would add while you're looking through this later is out of view here on the right, you'll see that there's a noted list of CCI priority or CCAT priority. I've cross-referenced those into this spreadsheet.
Cool.
So you can kind of see where the legislative priorities of those organizations are.
Great.
And just for whatever it's worth, if you've got questions on how those organizations are building coalitions around these issues, you'll see it there.
Is there any reason we should not, or we should put CC4CA on priorities on there? Will that?
They're on there.
You've got it? Okay, I didn't hear that. Thanks.
And if anything evolves at a Northwest COG meeting, I'll just keep you posted.
Thank you.
We kind of stay out of this except for big issues, so I'll let you know.
Perfect.
Great. Thanks for that. I think I want to wrap this up and move us along. We've got our next presenters,
Thanks,
next
Levi.
victims are in the room.
And then, in closing, if any of you all are members of different organizations, CCI, CCAT, however you work with these organizations, however I can best check in with you or to help with that, just let me know. And then I think we should probably have some kind of a standing check-in. I can do it by email. I can do whatever works best for
Right.
you all, but I want to make sure this is pretty open and fluid to make sure we don't
Right.
miss anything.
If you look at our committee assignments, you can just tag us for things, that'd be great.
Perfect.
And we can do the same.
Thank you, Levi.
Thanks for your
Thanks a
time.
lot. Thanks for coming.
being
Thanks, sorry to
patient.
rush you. Thanks for
Oh.
waiting.
Perfect. No problem.
Always come in during a Phillips discussion. It's really fun.
Levi, are you going to CCI meetings next week?
I'm going to cast in Crested View.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, we're gonna be
Cast,
interested here, but
cast.
I'm gonna call into the legislative thing. It's
Yeah.
only an hour, right, from 12:30 to 1:30, isn't that?
That's this Friday.
Okay,
Yeah,
we're
but
gonna
next
keep
week
it
are
moving
the
here.
steering committee
Thanks.
Next
meetings.
Friday are meetings.
The seat is still warm.
Yeah, that's right. I have it down to call in.
Does anybody
Because
need a
they'll be
break, or are we gonna
skiing
keep
that day.
plowing
I'm gonna
along?
pop out
waiting
for
for them
just
to
a
be
sec,
back
but they
tonight.
can
We
start.
can get them started, okay.
And that's the 26th.
Thanks,
I'll be right
Patty.
back, ladies. You can get
But I'll be going to the next one.
Do you want to sit kind
It's really irregular in February.
want me
It
to
looks
sit there?
really weird. Did you see?
Yeah,
the
sit in
photo
the
that
middle.
Denise
I'll be
sent out?
looking, staring at you.
I'm trying to avoid this light because I'm
really
getting a
bright.
migraine, so I'm like,
Oh, we could probably back those down a little
yeah,
bit.
that'd be
Let's,
awesome.
we can,
So sorry.
yeah, normally we kind of turn them down. When they're really hot, my eyes hurt at the end of the day.
I'm like,
today.
oh my gosh.
of? I just feel
Lisa.
hot in this room right
Did
now.
that help?
It is hot.
Just that helped you.
And I'm wearing
that better?
Hey, sure. I'll wear for you.
Want to wear her hat? I can loan you mine. I've got a beret sort of thing.
Cool.
I have a British sports car driving hat.
Well, great. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Greg. Happy New Year, everyone. I am Lisa McDonald with the Healthy Rivers Program, joined by Lisa Tusker with the program as well. We wanted to meet with you today and just give you a slight update on our grant criteria revisions that the River Board did probably early last year, mid last year, I think. They finally developed it. Yeah, finally moved to accept some of the changes that they wanted to see incorporated. Kirsten Neff might be on, and she would be a presenter. She is our vice chair and was on the small subcommittee that looked at some of these revisions. So as the agenda item states, in 2010, we started just receiving small funding requests. Greg probably remembers, Lisa probably remembers, just randomly throughout, the year, mainly Roaring Fork Conservancy would come to us, for example, or WAPA for invasive species funding. We started to receive quite a few, and so a few former board members wanted to maybe have a little more structure and developed a spring and fall grant hearing program, which we started that in 2014, I believe. And so we do a twice-year grant cycle in the spring and in the fall. Anything currently over 5,000 comes to the BoCC just as a thumbs up and approval on those grants. Today we'll go over kind of the changes that the board recommends, the River Board recommends, and give the BoCC some time to see if you have any questions. Let's see. During those discussions about the criteria, like I said, currently 5,000 and over comes to the BoCC, and they thought maybe we would up that to about 15,000, just because some of the smaller grants are, it's a lot of work for somebody to present to the River Board, then come to the BoCC at that time.
I wanted to ask, I saw that, and I wanted to ask what percentage of applications will be affected, and how will that change our workload versus what gets approved by?
It's going to be so much lighter. It'll be amazing. No.
I don't know the percentage. We have the list back
Can't give me
here.
hard numbers, but
Yeah.
whatever you want to. What do you think? How do you think it'll affect this?
I think the attracting maybe some more folks is what we were sort of thinking. was a
Hoping, yeah.
Possibility.
But they may decide the barrier of entry is lower, so they'll take a chance and submit.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
thank you.
So we can go over the items in your packet. The first is I highlighted like the old language, and then I highlighted in green the new language in the grant process and criteria document. It's fairly simple, not a lot of major changes. Exceeding 5,000 to 15,000. They redid the scoring matrix. It was on a scale of 1 to 100. They changed that to 1 to 5. Kind of smaller things like that. The grant criteria, as you'll see, there's just some small language changes. Like, for instance, item D is a history of requesting party to a project team experience. They felt like, some of these things they wanted more information on. And then the grant application itself is kind of a new format. It follows the criteria, and so we'll get this application from everybody. Currently, people just will write a letter, they'll follow some of the criteria, so every application is a little different. So this kind of cleans it up and makes it like a standard format. And then finally, they came up with a grant budget template that the applicant can fill out. And I know Kirsten's on, and she can maybe speak to some of these changes if the BoCC has any major questions. But we wanted to bring all this to you and let you know kind of what we're up to.
Okay, Kristen, welcome. Glad you're here. Thank you for coming. I did want to just put it to the board if anybody has a question, just from what we've seen so far already. Is there any question that you'd like to ask?
No, I read through it very carefully. It looks really good. It's a great idea to, I think, formalize the applications. Really good idea.
Yeah.
I agree with that, and I looked at it, and my question was, I think we talked about it last week with Steve and John and I, regarding the fund. If a fund, say you have a fund balance, but one year you don't get a full range of desirable or applicable candidates, does the fund roll over? And I just wanted to say that we should have some way to encourage you to do that if something comes that just isn't, I don't want you to feel compelled to give money away each year if it's not top level stuff, right? That was the idea, and I just wanted to ask, can it roll over, and can you build a fund?
Yeah. Generally, we have that, the line item is 150,000 every year. We just have that in the budget. This year, we bumped it up to 200,000 and for 2024, just to encourage, new folks, as you'll see on the grant list that we provided in the packet. A lot of them are the same funding, requesters coming in all the time. So we're hoping maybe with a little bit more money, maybe even some larger requests will come in. But as I noted in the packet, we only have once ever spent everything, and sometimes in the fall we haven't got a request at all. So those monies that we don't use go back into the fund. But we've always left it open that if something crazy fantastic comes along, even if it's out of the grant cycle, the board will still hear it and it would come back to you guys. So it's not a hard set rule that it's.
And what are the expectations of a group that comes every year expecting, how many, I don't know how many we have like that, but I'm just wondering is that a concern or a?
I don't know, what do you think?
I think so far, hopefully the board will remain brave enough to deal with that, but yes, I think that's always a question that we've had those conversations and tried to ponder that and make sure that, we're not ignoring something like that, we're taking that into consideration.
If it's meritorious, it gets, right, but maybe it's not just because it has a history of coming in every year.
Right. And I don't know, Kirsten, you may want to weigh in on this a little bit. I mean, does this make it feel like to you that you could be a little bit more brave in that kind of a situation if we do have some repeat folks that just maybe in that realm that Greg is describing? Is that
I couldn't Greg's microphone isn't working great, so I couldn't hear the actual question. What kind of realm?
My question was, how many repeat customers do you have, and do they actually have an expectation they're going to get funded every year? And is there complacency or
I don't think
expectation?
anyone has an expectation, but they probably see it as a solid maybe, right? And what I think we're hoping to do with the template in particular is to even the playing field for groups that maybe aren't as sophisticated or have that kind of experience of, oh, I need to create a budget. How does one create a budget? Well, we've given you a template here if you're an organization with less experience.
Great. So that lowers the barrier of entry. Thank you. And it doesn't lower the criteria for acceptance, which is great.
No.
Right.
Thanks,
And of course,
Kristen.
ultimately, it's up to, you
the
all.
board?
Over
Yeah,
15,000.
Yep, over the 15 if we decide to do that, yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Any other comments, questions? I'm comfortable with this as proposed.
Good.
Do you need a thumbs up or something to
Sure,
go from
that'd
yellow
be
to
great.
green?
I want to
Thumbs
see
up.
more osprey nests.
More osprey.
A thumbs up.
What is the budget reserve right now is like 3 million, right?
Yep.
Something, okay. So there's money in there to
There's
do
money,
a big
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
project.
Yeah.
Should include. Yeah.
We'll come up with something good.
We had a conversation earlier today just about water levels in the Roaring Fork and is water available for new development, and the thought
Greg,
that.
I'm good with the proposal.
Oh, Steve's there. Oh, Steve, let me finish my comment and then you can jump in. I'll recognize you.
Okay.
I'm concerned that we're going to see more water drawn from the Roaring Fork River. And if we determine that a development is qualified or not based on some sort of average water level, I just wonder how realistic is that, especially as we go into a drought and the levels are dropping. And I don't know if you're aware of that or paying attention to what we anticipate in terms of more diversions, but it seems they've extended the capacity on the Front Range to divert more. And I wonder if you're on top of that. I'm not, but maybe we'll circle back. But that's a big question I have regarding water in our river and maybe I don't think Laura's coming to talk about that. Okay. That's just a concern. I thought I'd alert you to it because I think that we're going to have more water diversion on the horizon, and lower water levels in the Roaring Fork as a result. That's it for me. Steve, sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying that looked through the whole proposal. I'm good with, the changes that are being proposed.
Great, thank you.
The one question I had was, looking at the total that's been awarded over the life of the program, 1.13 million, how much money is there in the budget right now? And about how much is collected each year in the tax money?
We have $3 million.
Yeah, I think that the fund balance at the end of, I think, 2024 is over 3 million right now is predicted, yeah. Collective-wise, I think we hit, was it over 2 million? No, when did we?
No, it's
1
like
million.
1 point.
Yeah, we're a little over $1 million annually.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. Collection-wise, yearly.
Does that answer?
So it's good to increase the amounts that there are available, because
Saves time in the long run.
you could have probably given out more money over the ensuing years right now, but it's good to make the adjustment now.
Mhm.
Okay,
True.
thank you. But I think the goal isn't to give out more money, it's to get better results, correct?
I like that.
Exactly. Right, and to do, our projects and in-house work too.
Right.
So,
Yeah, it seems like we're sort of expanding a little bit and trying to be, we have some more opportunities to maybe do some more in-house projects and partnerships, and that's exciting.
Great.
You haven't come to us to talk about beavers yet this year.
It's coming.
it's coming.
Okay.
Still early. It's January, mid-January.
It's January 16th already, come on.
They're floating on those icebergs on the Roaring Fork.
We hope not, man. Then they got to get back to their home
back
somehow.
You've heard about the ice dam alerts.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Hey.
Is there anything else?
No, I think we'll hang out for the joint prep that we're going to have a joint meeting with the River Board and you all on January 30th.
Great,
So,
thank you.
And don't worry, they'll talk to you about beavers then.
Oh, no, I won't be here. I won't be at that meeting, sorry.
Oh, no.
In Denver.
great. So anyway, I think the joint meeting came about from a conversation maybe Kelly and Francie had at the December 19th meeting regarding, where we are with wild and scenic. So I'm not sure how you guys prep or what you want to, talk about. I think wild and scenic is probably going to be one of the bigger topics and how we move forward after we've done the whole stakeholder steering committee process. So if the board has other ideas.
Were you guys at the Crystal River Caucus last week? Online? I didn't see it. Or,
No.
it definitely came up.
I heard a little
Kate
bit.
was there.
Yes.
And it came up that there was just frustration that anything besides wild and scenic is still being discussed, and why haven't answers about wild and scenic been answered? Like, why are people asking the same questions they were asking a year ago? Came up several times.
Who are they asking the questions of?
John Emmerich, who's on the collaborative team, whatever that's called.
The Wild and Scenic team.
I mean, I can frame my opinion of where we're at, and everyone's welcome to jump in who's participated. I felt really deflated leaving our December Wild and Scenic collaborative meeting personally. I've had it reframed for me from some more optimistic people. But what I will say is, what we left with is consensus around two possible paths that the next meeting in February will further dig into. There is substantial agreement that we should do whatever we can to pursue state and local solutions to protect the river. And that, for example, Gunnison and Pickens should get together, align our 1041 regs, update them to do anything and everything possible to prevent any possible dam. So that's sort of one snapshot of what that grouping of state and local regs might look like. There's other things on that menu as well that have been contemplated. And then where it departs on wild and scenic, though there's consensus around both, is continue to investigate and educate ourselves around what wild and scenic could do. Lesser consensus, but still consensus from our facilitator's point of view is, pursue wild and scenic and continue the education and fleshing out of problems or issues that need to be resolved related to wild and scenic. So you can see they're different paths, but
Are these three separate paths, or is it just a
well,
hierarchy?
both include, let's do local and state, whatever local state steps we can take. Both include that. One path is, let's continue to educate ourselves and consider. The other path is, let's pursue it and identify, the issues that need to be worked out for what wild and scenic would look like on the Crystal. So I know for me, and I said this in the meeting, I was like, well, it's a bit of a disappointment that we're at the end of this long process and now I have to go back to my board and tell them that people still don't know enough about wild and scenic to say with gusto that this is the right solution. And I said, I don't know how that's going to land, but I'll take that back to my board. And everyone around the table wants to continue the process. They don't want to stop this collaborative effort. The idea is yes, we're going to have a recommendation in the next month or two, and then we want to all move into a phase 2 about that. I will say my opinion is that I personally have been very intentional about not having wild and scenic be the foregone conclusion throughout this process. So, if you remember when we asked everybody to come to the table, it was, we want to talk about wild and scenic. You don't need to know how you feel about it yet. In some ways, we're still there. And, looking back at our process, I and I think others didn't push to make wild and scenic the central part of the conversation because we were being intentional about wanting people to come to this conclusion on their own without it Pickens County is trying to drive a foregone conclusion. So in many ways, I think that's been a success. They have come to, embrace wild and scenic more than where we started, but not as much as I think we had hoped, is how I would summarize where we're at after a year of effort.
John's answer the other night about why aren't the questions answered about wild and scenic was that the moderators felt that they couldn't answer those questions because it would look like they were promoting wild and scenic if they answered those questions, which begs the question, so if the questions are positive, if the answers are positive, we can't say them because it looks like we're prejudiced,
Sounds like the airport.
Yeah, that was kind of frustrating to hear it.
Yeah.
They couldn't reach a consensus opinion.
Say again?
They couldn't reach a consensus opinion to get that question answered by a moderator.
I mean, I do think that I think our facilitators are really good. I don't know if you guys think they're really good, but I actually think they're really astute. And, they don't create the agendas or run the meeting without input of the chairs. And the chairs are Pickens County, Gunnison County, Marble, and the River District. So I wouldn't necessarily just let them take any blame for the process without owning some of that. Or criticism about how the process has gone. I mean, I definitely know that many of us who are staunch wild and scenic advocates have felt like it's gotten short shrift in the conversations this last year. Some of that has been intentional. And now that it's at a place where the group has committed to diving into wild and scenic, the question is as well, what does the next phase look like, and what does everyone's support of that next phase look like?
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
That's a good update. My question then is, as we prepare for a meeting with Healthy Rivers, is there a funding need? It's really a funding organization, right? And is there a funding need to study the other option, the local and regional state options that you discussed in your first thing that everybody wants to do, despite whatever happens to Wild and Scenic? Do we need to put money toward developing that? Because that might be something that Healthy Rivers can contribute to.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that there may be a specific funding ask coming out of the stakeholder process for continued education or continued sort of discussions. In terms of local and statewide agreements, the primary one that I've heard is sort of a robust increasing of an alignment, as Kelly mentioned, of Pitkins and Gunnison's 1041. That's something, honestly, we could probably do in-house. It's not a significant expense. We have 1041 and they have 1041. I, based on a quick glance, think they look somewhat similar. Coordination between the two entities on specific things can be done, and IGA can be drafted. That's not a huge sort of financial ask. I think any financial ask that comes forward would be, if there's going to be a continuation of a stakeholder process that requires professional mediators, there might be an ask associated with that. I expect coming out of this February meeting, when there's sort of a decision or consensus point on if folks want to move forward and what they might want that to look like, that's when things might come back and folks might say, hey, this is what we're going to do. And it might be, if the recommendation of the stakeholder process is you should only look at 1041, then this board and Healthy Rivers might say, this is not the right process for us. It doesn't meet the needs that we see on the crystal, and we'd have to look at other things. We're just not quite there yet in terms of exactly what it looks like, I think.
So I want to ask that, thank you, that was the answer I was looking for. I would like to ask then, what else are we going to talk about with Healthy Rivers and Streams? Because this could be a very short meeting, perhaps. I don't know.
Beaver. I think there's a lot to talk about with
I have
wild
faith
and
in
scenic.
you guys.
But can I just,
I have
do you
to
feel
tee
like
it up
I
beforehand.
accurately have represented sort of where we're at, I think?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
you can always
from
tell
the
me no.
from the beginning, any entity is not bound by whatever the process looks like. So, Pitkin has invested quite a bit to have a robust community conversation. There are certainly folks who have been diligent throughout that conversation on advocating for anything but wild and scenic. The same way there have been folks diligent in that conversation on advocating for wild and scenic. Both are true, and both are pretty common in a community conversation. Coming out of that, if the folks in this stakeholder process, advise or recommend something that this board doesn't want to pursue, you are in no way, shape, or form obligated, and you can still take whatever steps you think are necessary.
Great, thank you.
And I would just note, the Healthy Rivers board has funded, 25 grand to this facilitated process, 35 grand to EcoFlight, over numerous years, 30 or 35, and Wilderness Workshop as well, all related to this conversation. So it's not without significant investment from the fund and the board.
Great.
We've done advertising, we've done other things too along the way, so we can bring all those costs to what we've actually spent on Wild and Scenic. Yeah.
Well, I'd love it for this meeting to include I don't know, we'd call it a brainstorming session, whatever, on, where is it going? It sounds like this is all pretty well baked and there's no surprises coming. And you're soliciting new ideas. Let's figure out how we can amp that up and create the best outreach to the community and maybe solicit some new ideas.
I just have one question about the grants that you've awarded. I didn't see the Marble School on there.
That wasn't like
Not
a
grants.
grant. That was more of an in-house project between us and the school.
Yeah, so they have a specific grant process that falls in, that you
All the
fit in this
criteria.
box, you're evaluated this way. They already had a line item regarding education, and so that specific request came in through that line item. It wasn't a classic sort of grant request project, but it's how this board at least has functioned to let needs come up and bubble that don't fit in the box still get filled.
How many other things are there that are like that aren't on this list?
Well, nothing's exactly like that, but they, if you look at what they did with the Robinson Ditch, that's working with Mid-Valley Metro on this alternative sort of solution to something that wouldn't fit easily in that grant box. And you guys are much better at knowing everything you're doing.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Well, even the beaver inventory project, that wasn't a grant. That was
I see.
more of an in-house project,
Okay.
that
Great,
we've done.
thanks.
And
So-
even with, I'm having I'm in a little bit of trouble right now because I have
Your migraine.
in the middle of a migraine, which is just neither here nor there. But anyway,
Thanks for coming.
but we are also looking at on Thursday. We're looking at maybe moving from shifting the funds that went toward the ICE. Release and that moving those funds to a different category, but without going through the actual. So it's very similar, right, to what we said before, which was. I can't even talk right now. I'm sorry. I'm so
That happens to me too. When I
It's
get
just-
my
So one of the,
Okay.
one
My
of the
brain
things
is
that
just-
one of the things that I think
Yes.
the Lisas are going to run
Yeah.
through with you at that
Right.
joint meeting
Yeah.
is the projects that have been ongoing by Healthy Rivers over the last year, because it's substantial and they sort of fall, like they just keep doing the work, and sometimes things don't bubble up and you don't hear about them because it's just happening, right? Like you solve the problem and then you don't hear about the problem.
Got it. Well, what comes to mind for me is the very concerning issue of the Lincoln Creek
Yeah.
outflow. Are we going to be talking about that? You'll have an update on that, or
You
do we
will have an update on that on the 30th, not as part of their presentation, but coincidentally
Right.
and conveniently on the same
30th.
day that you have them in there.
Okay. Now, will there be an ask for Healthy Rivers funding toward that project? Which
Not
seems
not
like a
on the
project.
30th. So Kurt Dahl and Environmental Health have taken the lead thus far, and I've been working with both Environmental Health and Healthy Rivers on it. There is going to be a community meeting, I think, on February 1st, and I expect that there will likely be asks that come out of that meeting. So you're going to get a preview on the 30th about what Environmental Health and Healthy Rivers knows, what they think they don't know, that there's some room for investigation and next steps, and then coming out of the first, you may get a more robust request for steps depending on what you guys want to do.
I was, yeah.
My guess was you guys were going to be concerned about it, and you were going to not want to say, oh, the EPA has said this is the end of their discussion. That should be the end of our discussion. My guess was that's not where you're going to end up.
We're doing Lincoln Creek on the 23rd.
It's been moved
It's
to
just
the
changed.
changed.
Darn, 'cause I didn't want to miss that because
Yeah.
I'm the heavy
You'll be
metal
here.
guy.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think that's important enough, and I want to make sure Healthy Rivers understands that this is really a big issue. In a conversation at Rawapa a month or two ago, I don't know if you were there or not, but a representative from Glenwood said that, when we have to pull water from the Roaring Fork to serve Glenwood's municipal water needs, people complain because they're tasting something in the Roaring Fork, and it's likely coming all the way from the Lincoln Creek, somehow is changing the nature of the water enough that they're noticing it there and they don't want to drink it. And that's pretty hard to swallow for me, living here my entire life, and I'm living on the banks of the river and realizing that we probably have a problem. And I think this is a perfect thing for healthy rivers to sink their teeth into.
Shouldn't their water be going through a treatment plant? They don't just drink it right out of the river.
No, they don't. But
Well,
there's
forbid.
something going on there. And if you don't know what it is, and I don't know what it is, that makes me
Be their
nervous.
new water treatment plant.
Not to
Yeah.
cause
Our water
great
gets there, it's
alarm,
pretty
but
dilute,
that
heavy
was
metals in it.
related to us by, I think, a city councilman.
That's
from Glenwood.
interesting, because I find that water that's tasteless is really yucky, and I don't really like it, because my water comes out of a well, so we have lots of heavy minerals in our water, and it tastes so good.
Maybe we
Everybody
should
who comes to
bottle
my
this
house
stuff.
loves it, and then I go into Carbondale, for instance, and it's like,
Not the same.
if there's any flavor at all, it's chlorine, and
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, chlorine's not
yeah.
a great flavor,
Right.
but this is also killing fish. And so it's something that I think would be a red flag for you guys, or for your board.
Yeah.
Then again, it's
Lisa's
really hard to
definitely
clean
been
up
on
Mother
it with
Nature, guys.
Kurt.
If it's a natural occurrence, it's a really tough one to clean up.
I don't. Spoilers. I think that this will be a long-term conversation that you guys will be involved in. I think it's a long-term conversation that the community will be involved in, and I don't think there is an easy answer.
Right, yep.
Yeah, this is definitely, and you're gonna hear from Kurt, he's gonna talk about, this is really it's EPA's, issue and their deal this February 1st from 6 till 7:30 p.m. at the Rocky Mountain Institute. That's where this is going to be happening, and everybody who's found out about it has asked us to send them any kind of information, any kind of press release that ends up happening from Pickens County. Everybody's asking for it, including RMI and all of their staff. They want to hear about this, everybody that works there. So yeah, it's, and I think there's about 5 minutes that's being given to those of us who are local and involved with this, which includes everybody and anyone you can think of that's interested in water, including Karen Teague, who is, you could see some of her comments in the press. So, there is definitely supposed to be a very strong conversation that everybody is very interested in what this is going to look like next, and they're basically going to say, we don't know, but we're all paying attention, and just letting the whole community understand that everybody's been focused on this for a year and a half. So
Right.
it's kind of like trying to just give
We
that
could make it, we
communication.
could make it a super fun site.
The EPA is you will be relieved to know not proposing that.
That's
Patty.
right.
Glad to hear that.
Yeah,
But-
that's
but-
what they're doing. Yeah.
Yeah, but the EPA's position on this falls within their obligations under a specific regulatory framework, and that's what they're working in, right? Like, you guys aren't bound by that, and where their sort of review of this ends can only be a beginning for this board, honestly.
Got it. Thank you for that.
Is it coming under the Clean Water Act?
It was that's how they did the initial scoping on it, but yeah,
RECRA?
CERCLA.
Oh,
Yeah.
circle.
All the things.
Still have my copy of those documents. It's probably a little dated, but
Well, thanks for that. That's all I have. Thanks for
If
coming
you think
in.
of other things
Headache
I'd
and
like
all.
to talk about
great. It's good to see you.
in the joint,
Beavers and heavy metals in the water.
right?
I can meet between 8:30 and noon on Monday.
8:30 and noon. Okay, perfect.
Okay. Does anybody need a break that hasn't had one? You good? Let's keep moving here. What do we have next? We've got
Future agendas, I believe.
future agendas with John. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks, ladies.
Feel better.
See you in a couple of weeks.
Give you your hat.
Do something.
Thank you.
So thanks, Greg. I wanted to confirm with the board, I think we had chosen February 6th and 7th.
We hadn't really.
But we hadn't really settled the thing that you had on the 6th were John's and my reviews, which we could push. And then a review of a strategic communications plan, which we could push. I'd be happy, excuse me, I'm sorry. I'd be happy to have more time to prepare to if the board wanted to push back. So
The 5th and 6th of February?
6th and 7th,
I'm sorry.
Tuesday and Wednesday, was what we had talked about, but we hadn't confirmed. And so I'm happy to push back and get more time to prep, or happy to go with those dates, because
Well,
there's not a lot on the agendas right now.
I would suggest we stick to those dates. If we talked about them, I was comfortable with them.
I'm good.
If everyone else is comfortable, let's
I'm
stay
good.
with that, unless you just don't have time to
Okay.
prep, in which case let's give you more time.
No, we'll make good use of the time. I'll spend some time with you and Steve, Greg, on kind of proposed agenda. I'll try and bring that back. What?
And can we put in some input too?
Yeah. And then we may be pressed to get a location on this timeline, because they do book out. So we'll figure that out. It may be not at our typical Meadows place.
So the work session would just be the retreat.
Correct.
All right. So
APSHA is that Wednesday. If we could
Oh, that
end.
is a long day.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's all right.
Okay.
If we could just end early enough.
And on affordable housing
And
too.
perhaps try not to start before 9. It's really hard for me to get anywhere
Okay.
before 9. You guys can all start before 9, but I won't.
are you whispering or am I really deaf?
No,
I'm kind of
Before
whispering.
9.
it's not about not starting before 9. Kelly, if we have to get there earlier, we could.
And then
but
you can have breakfast and coffee. You don't have to wait for
breakfast at
that, but-
8:30, 9 o'clock. I'm Steve, if you're still with us, weigh in it, but I think we're going to stick with this 5th and 6th, 6th and 7th. 6th and 7th.
Tuesday, Wednesday.
Well, silence is consent from Steve.
Yeah, those dates are good, Greg.
Thanks, Steve. Okay, and we're going to get together with John to hash this out with input from everyone else. Anything
That's
else
all I
on
had
that?
on future agendas.
That's it for future agendas. Great. Thank you.
Just so Charlotte knows, because she's always listened to this, we'll not be here on the 30th, because it was the 5th Tuesday of the month, and I booked a doctor's appointment in Denver thinking we didn't have a work session, but we do. We have 5 in January.
We canceled our first one.
That's right.
That's right.
I still have it on my
So
calendar.
I have something.
Mentally, I was
So we're going to go to
here.
board open discussion. Are you ready for that,
No,
Francie?
I have something on
future agendas. Okay.
I noticed that one of the days that I'm gone, I think Charlotte had put down that I'll be absent on the 23rd of January from that meeting, but also on the 24th for the regular
Yeah, I
meeting.
thought you were
I will
gonna-
not be here. Well, I don't know. What time are we
It's our
leaving
energy code conversation.
to go to Crested Butte? Are we going to come to the meeting first, or?
I was probably going to come to the meeting and then drive over in the evening.
Okay, so what time are you thinking? So I guess I will be here then. Okay.
Let me look and see. I haven't actually looked at the agenda
Okay.
yet. So
All right.
Got it. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to move it to board open discussion. Topics for open discussion.
Yeah, I've got a couple from staff, Greg. First, there is Mona Newton on by any chance?
We got these.
Did you get these?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So you should have a letter of support. It's for the Community Business Preservation Program grant. As you will recall, the board, I think, Francie, you had brought forward some requests to think about funding for local businesses in Redstone that have been impacted by, for example, the road closure and such. I think this grant program would be aimed at supporting 5 businesses in the Redstone area, and they're looking for a letter of support from the board. I don't have a lot of details on the.
Who is this?
Who is the grant? Who is the grant committee? It's not a committee of ours.
No.
It's the
They're
state.
just asking us to write a letter of
The
support.
state, okay, I was wondering, it looked like it was from us to us there for a minute.
The first sentence has a typo, an error. It says,
Is the Redstone Community Association.
So that isn't necessary.
Do you know
Hello?
Redstone Community Association?
You're the one who wrote this.
I did not write it.
Who are we writing it to?
You guys got really fast.
yeah, it says the grant review
It's a
committee. Is
state
that this one?
grant.
Back on schedule somehow.
Doesn't say which
It's this
group.
I do know Katie, who's the vice president for the Redstone Community Association, was planning to join at 4:15, but I'll try and cover. So, they are the umbrella for 5 different businesses along Redstone, and they're applying to OEDIT's program. It's the Office of Economic Development's program. That is a small business grant program, essentially, to cover for all 5 of those businesses.
Who are the businesses?
Doesn't say in the grant.
How many associations and stuff do they have in Redstone? It's such a small community, and they've got.
Lots of associations.
One for each resident.
At least one.
I think they're capped now, right?
Very entrepreneurial over there.
Yeah.
I feel like some have 2. Some of them have 2 for them.
Just out of interest, there's an article which may not even apply with this. And certainly I would be in favor of signing this letter once we clean up a couple typos, or at least one I see.
Put it on our
See the grant. This is just the grant application.
Community
Except the
business
letter, yeah.
preservation.
There's an article in the Colorado Sun Business that says that Colorado offered $1.45 billion in incentives to attract new business. Only 5% was claimed. Maybe there's something in that.
Well, I wonder if it might be beneficial to wait until we have the representative from Redstone. I do have a whole nother letter I can go over.
Oh, great, yeah, let's bring her
yeah.
on when she gets here. Fine, we can table this for a minute.
Unless we don't have a problem with the letter, we can just move it forward.
Unless and
I
it
can-
sounds like there might be a lot of
I
questions.
can give
that's
you
always-
a quick synopsis
Okay.
and see. So, the grant is to the Small Business Preservation Program under the Office of OEDIT. It's for 5 businesses. Avalanche Outfitters, which they've confirmed they can apply as a lessee on Picken County land.
They can or cannot?
They can. Redstone Inn, the General Store, the Redstone Station, and Redstone Cliffs Lodge. Each business under this grant can apply for up to $50,000 in infrastructure upgrades, and then RCA serves as the administrative arm of the grant and has a small percentage there. So that is essentially what the grant application and just a letter of support, and it's due on Friday, which is why it's before you today.
So
I have a
these
hard
aren't
time
new.
supporting Avalanche Outfitters. They reposted 2 pictures of hunters in Idaho on Christmas Day that killed these 2 beautiful wolves that they're holding up like this. It's the most horrible thing. It says, "Merry Christmas, best Christmas ever." One was like a 17 or 18-year-old kid. And other things about Avalanche Outfitters, I mean, that's hard for me, to be honest. But I'd be happy to support the other businesses who opposed SDRs in Redstone, one of them. So they're asking us just to write this letter of support as as their local government.
I mean, this is just the form. There's nothing, there's no
No,
application
So we haven't
detail.
seen what they're going to do, right?
Oh, there is
This
a
is
letter of
just
support.
instructions
I
on
know,
how
but
to
the letter of the
apply.
support is attached to a blank grant application.
It's just instructions on how to
instructions.
apply.
We were going to talk about another
No, I
letter
see the
till the
letter.
Redstone lady
What is it supposed to
checks in. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Let's
I
do that.
wonder if it might help to have the person who's requesting the letter here, since it sounds like there's some
And
questions.
if you can
If
get
you
her
can
on
get
the line,
zoomed in,
that'd be
because
great.
nobody's been able to zoom in, so hopefully, hopefully it works.
So, John's distributing that, and Kelly has one.
Yeah, I just would, I just want to give 2 quick updates from APSHA. So, with the repair grant program, we've spent almost half the money on repairs. And so there's some updates to the program that are coming in front of the board
this is when you're
tomorrow,
ready.
but that's a good thing. And then you know, this is going to seem like deja vu, but we're also talking about an RFP for an updated capital reserve study. You know, after the last one was done 12 years ago. And if you may remember in our joint meeting with the city over the summer, both boards agreed that capital reserves was like number one priority. Like, let's figure out how to preserve and keep what we have. So that is the next step in kind of moving that forward. So I just wanted to let you all know that.
Okay. So we've been given a letter by John, which we haven't seen yet.
Yeah, and I'll walk you through it. You can peruse it. Steve, I'm sorry, I've got physical copies. Okay, we'll forward this to you, but just in brief, I received a letter from the town of Carbondale. I think the intent was really for the board. And it's requesting assistance at various levels with their efforts to serve, the arrival of unhoused immigrant newcomers in their community. As you know, the 3rd Street Center quickly did stand up. We did provide some cots and such. I know, Francie, you provided several meals, I believe, in that process. But the 3rd Street Center, could only support that for so long. They're transitioning to 2 other shelter sites. I think to sum up, Carbondale is asking for support on 3 levels right now. One is asking for cash to support their efforts to provide shelter and food services. They've asked us for $50,000. I believe the same request has gone out to both Garfield and Eagle counties also.
Not on here.
I did talk to the manager, and he did receive, so they
good.
may not have had it on the CC.
Okay, great.
And Jeff from Eagle received the same letter.
Okay, good.
So cash, they're looking to see if we would have the ability to stand up any shelter services of our own to serve the population, and then assistance in long-term planning. Carbondale is really planned through the end of March to provide these services, and looking for regional discussion. Wanted to give the board some thoughts on response and avenues to this request, and see if we can get some guidance for next steps from you. First, regarding the cash request, DOLA, I've been in conversations with DHS, the State Emergency Management. I can't get the acronym right for whatever reason. And DOLA. DOLA had originally funded 100% of Carbondale's request. I spoke with Lauren, the town manager, today, and she confirmed that they haven't made any additional requests. I do think that DOLA would be willing to continue to step up to fund these services through March 31st if Carbondale is able to provide a kind of detailed request and what the gap funding would be needed for. And so I'd encourage us, before we put up dollars, would be to offer to support Carbondale, both technically if they need help putting a new request together and estimates, as well as support from this body for additional grant funding from DOLA before looking. I think the state's been very willing to do that, and it may be more a question of technical support.
Was Lauren open to that?
Yeah, and I encouraged her to reach out to their regional rep. They're in a different district than us.
Great.
So that's regarding the
So
funding.
and then I do think it would be a good conversation for this board to have about, if there were any gaps from DOLA funding to the services that Carbondale is providing, if you'd be willing to provide any of those last dollars up to a certain amount. That would also be probably a good commitment, and one I don't think you need to make yet until there's another ask of DOLA.
Greg?
Patty?
Yeah, I support our efforts. I just think we need to, as Francie had said earlier about helping the people at Woody Creek, at Phillips Trailer Court, what makes them, what are we doing for everybody else? We have our own homeless situations with people who are from our valley, and I think we're going to hear from the public. We're reaching out. What are we doing? I think trying to create, like we did that stand-up shelter at the Intercept lot, which I think worked amazingly well with Recovery Resources. But John and I were talking earlier, there's cultural differences that may not make that a smooth place to manage, or to manage smoothly, I should say. So I support looking at what we can do with assistance, helping them with grants, and pursuing other grant opportunities. I think if it comes to using our dollars, I think the board will need to have to discuss that if and when that time comes. Because I know we've also reached out with our supplies that we had at the airport, that we have up here in case we have an emergency. But that made sense. Again, giving those people something to sleep on other than a floor, I think was really beneficial. And I know maybe we can Mountain Family Health, see if they might be able to provide us any assistance if we have people in need of medical care. I think we have some opportunities that we can assist Carbondale with, but I think we need to be prepared to hear from people in our community about what are we doing for our own homeless.
Well, it's a good transition because we did do a soft stand-up of some of our emergency support functions, just to start doing some pre-planning in the event that we got a request or we started to see impacts on our own services. I will share, I left our meeting this morning a little bit early to join the end of that planning meeting. And we are seeing a little bit, we are starting to see more utilization of our services. So our day center, and I do want to note for the public, and thanks for bringing that up, Patty, that we do provide services for homeless and such in our community. We have the Resiliency Center, which provides both case management, but also places to do laundry and keep warm and such during the day. We are providing a night shelter out of the Schultz Human Services building. It is oversubscribed. That is the challenge, to your point. Right now, we do have a waiting list for a lot of those services. We are seeing our Resiliency Center starting to get used by more of our immigrant newcomers. I don't have specific data on it yet. Hopefully we'll be able to track that longitudinally and bring you some data, but we are starting to see utilization of those services, utilization of our food pantry at Schultz, and then utilization of community health services, in this case for it could be prenatal care, immunizations, all the things that we've been funding through those public health services. We are starting to see an uptick, and so we're starting to prepare that we may have that next step of a number of newcomers coming into our community. And to your point, we do already have a waiting list for services. I do think that if the board is open to it through our emergency support functions, we could bring some alternatives forward to you to see, is it a safe outdoor space, and how might we manage that, and where? Are there some temporary shelter options that, in partnership, for example, maybe with our faith-based community or others that have been planning for housing in the event of a disaster, that we might be able to utilize through the end of winter? If the board is willing to step into that space or consider stepping into that space, I think we would be prepared to bring some of those options forward, but I want to get some direction from you all that you'd want to hear those options as a potential response to this request. And frankly, just a potential response, because we may be starting to feel this impact
Right.
now. Because I think if we're feeling it and seeing it, the numbers are probably bigger behind it.
Yeah, I think we should look at all of our options and opportunities.
Yeah, I certainly want just to take a poll. Is there a thumbs up that we pursue this? I think we have probably a consensus that we should. Steve hasn't. Steve, if you're paying attention there, if you're here with us, would you support what John is suggesting?
I mean, frankly, I'm surprised we haven't had planes landed here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they can't get in.
We,
Greg, I do support it. I've been listening.
Great, thanks, Steve. Okay. so I think-
International flights.
Yeah,
I agree that I think we should let them go through the DOLA process before we commit to giving any money. Because it would have been nice if they had been a little bit more efficient in their response to this by asking for help from Eagle and Pitkin, but they didn't. And so they could have moved things along a lot faster in terms of getting money from DOLA and that kind of thing. So I would like to see them do another request to DOLA and then see how that turns out before we commit to money. But I would like us to look at possible stand-up shelters. I mean, the outside shelter in the last 24 hours seems like an absolute nightmare to me, but, and in terms of the population, so far, it's been a very, very easy population to monitor. They're very respectful and clean and, there's been no excessive drinking or anything like that. However, they are not well educated in how to survive the cold. So sometimes they go to work with no gloves, no hat, even when it's 5 degrees outside and stuff. That could be a problem with an outside shelter. That would take some education.
and I think we would want to present an alternative to the board too, to Patty, to your point there. It's likely that if this type of resource is set up, it won't just be access.
Exactly.
And that, I think, Patty, when you're talking about the challenge of populations and such, it's really all the populations that may mix in a facility like that, and how we manage that so that everyone is safe, because there are misunderstandings.
Our unhoused would be certainly as eligible.
And it'd be great
as
to
the
see Garfield
refugees.
County help us with this effort.
Say again?
Be great to see Garfield County help with this effort.
Don't hold your breath.
I was just saying, thinking that the difference between what we think of as somebody who is homeless, there's a very high percentage of homeless people in the U.S. are homeless because they have a mental health issue of some sort, an addiction or a mental health problem. Immigrants aren't in that same category.
Right.
They've come, for reasons other than mental health issues. They're here because perhaps they were forced out of their country for one reason or another. And so you can see there's a difference, and we should consider that. I'd like to give John enough. I want to make sure you feel if you have enough leeway to do what you feel is necessary. If there's an emergency situation or if there's an urgent need, I want you to feel comfortable having the ability to act on it, as we have already. You didn't have to come to us for a conference on it. You were able to act. I want to make sure you have those resources. I understand waiting for DOLA, and I understand that maybe it wasn't stood up as quickly or as efficiently as it could have been, but what emergency is.
Yeah.
So I want to be able to be as flexible as possible so we can help make this more comfortable for the.
Yeah, thank you, Greg. And just so the board knows, we did authorize another 40 cots to help stand up the new shelter. So I think that's 90 cots we've
And where are the others?
down.
They're in.
The Methodist Church in Carbondale and the Town Hall.
Mm.
You know how that big thing comes down the middle of Town Hall, that room?
Right.
So
down
that's
there.
closed in the mornings now, and they're on the other side of that, where the breakfast usually is.
Right, got it.
They're on the other side of that from, I think it's 5:30 until 8:30, 5:30 at night until 8:30 the next morning, something like that.
Got it. So
And-
I can anticipate, as you have,
Yeah.
that this could grow bigger and it could grow up valley. And that's what they're inferring, and I think we should be prepared for that. And I'm sure you are. I want to make sure you have the ability to work with it.
And I guess this would be a good time to check in with the board. We have emergency funds budgeted in the manager's budget. And the intention was, gosh, if there's a wildfire or major, there generally, we have dipped into a little bit of that funding. For example, we had an individual kind of emergent issue with a newly arrived immigrant mother that we provided some support to get housed in the cold weather and that sort of thing. So we have been using not much, but a little bit of the funding just to deal with those kind of truly life safety kind of issues. And so we'll continue to do that, but that doesn't address the larger issues that we're talking
Keeping
about.
in mind it's only January,
I
we might
know.
have a big drought season this summer,
I
and
know,
we might.
I know.
So we do have to.
It's not big, yeah.
No, I think you did the right thing. Too.
Do you have do you have an inventory of potential shelters that we
So-
haven't tapped yet or that could be asked?
We have groups that, in our emergency support functions that do this planning. It's not exactly for this kind of event, right? And so those are the resources we'll tap, and we'll bring that information back to you.
Great.
That's
Thank
why
you.
we put the teams together. And then the last request is to convene or participate in regional planning. This is something I'd encourage the board to do. I do think there are some things that are happening at the state level. We've been invited to a bi-weekly call with DHS-EM, that's it, to talk about the just statewide issues with dealing with the large number of newcomers who are unhoused. They have promised a more of a policy discussion, what the policy of the state is going to be. And I think any regional conversations need to be built with an understanding of that hopefully is going to be happening in the next couple weeks, and then can look at how we might pull leadership together. I would suggest probably me trying to pull my peers together to kind of get a sense of where each county sits and start seeing what regional planning looks like post March 31st at this point.
And especially long term, because the results of the election November may change what Colorado faces in 2025.
So those are how I'd suggest right now responding to these three requests, and I want to get some guidance from the
Tonight
board.
is the work session for Carbondale Town Trustees. So Ben wrote me and asked if I'd be interested in coming, and so I'm going to go to that, mostly probably just to listen. But, I'll say that, we're willing to participate, and that we really encourage you to put in another dollar request.
When you come back, can you help illustrate, what the population is a little bit more? It's just
We can try and we'll try and gather what data we can from how our services are being impacted, and then the work that Carbondale and Voices Unitas has done to, understand the group of 125 to 175 folks that have landed in our community.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, we'll bring what data we can. I don't know how. It's all going to be point in time, and it's shifting a lot.
Sure.
Yeah.
Are those the only funding
Those
requests?
those were the requests. That's my suggestion right now for how we respond. If the board's okay, I'll take that as direction, and
Yep.
if you want to change it, it'd be
Thumbs
good
up.
to know.
Thumbs up from us.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks for bringing that to us.
Yeah. That's and then open discussion. The last thing staff had was we were supposed to have a conversation with. Oh, I'm sorry, Katie from RCA is
Oh,
here.
no, she's here. Okay.
Thank you for reminding me, Rosa. I was gonna totally forget about that. Francie, I think I'm getting a cold. I'm sorry.
Okay, so Katie, welcome. We waited this item, actually, we were ahead of schedule, but we slowed it down enough to get you on with us. This is regarding the request from Redstone. And Kara, why don't you take it away?
Sure. So, Katie, thank you for joining. I think if you could give an overview about what the grant application is for the board. We did briefly introduce their letter, but there's a little bit of questions about it. So if you could give a quick overview about the grant application for the board, and then that would be helpful.
Sure. So, first of all, my name is Katie Lowry, and I am the treasurer of the Redstone Community Association. I'm actually here last minute as the grant writer was not able to make it due to jury duty. So bear with me here. So the grant that we are applying for is called the Community Business Preservation Program. And it's up to 2 to 6 businesses in the town of Redstone that can apply for upward $10,000 to $50,000 for infrastructure usage. So not retail, not inventory, all infrastructure. As of right now, we have 5 businesses that are wanting to apply. That's the Redstone Inn, the Redstone Trading Station, Avalanche Outfitters, Redstone General Store, and Redstone Cliffs Lodge. We're basically just asking for a letter of support from the BoCC. We have a letter of support from the Redstone Art Foundation as well as the Redstone Historical Society.
Katie, can you elaborate? Is this a $50,000 total for all 5, or is this $10,000 to $50,000
That's per
each?
business, so anywhere from $10,000 to $50,000 per business.
Do we have any idea what their asks are?
I don't know the specific asks per business because I also work at the Redstone Inn. I can tell you the Redstone Inn is asking for the full $50,000. They are looking to do a permanent wedding site as opposed to their temporary tent that gets taken down every year, as well as tree maintenance for that site, drainage issues. Avalanche Outfitters, I believe, is asking for, I don't know the amount, but they're asking for help with fencing. And I honestly, I haven't heard from the other ones. If my grant writer, Mona Newton, was here, she would be able to tell you more, but I'm sorry, I don't have that information yet.
Mona's not with us. Okay, well, we know Mona, and we know she's usually pretty good at this, so the jury must still be out.
No.
Yes, right.
I feel a need for more detail on this. Is there a deadline on this that we have to meet?
Yeah, actually, the grant is due on the 19th.
Friday.
So you want to send it by the 18th?
I believe that Mona will be sending everything out the day of the 19th, so she will need all of her stuff either first thing that morning or the day before.
Great, okay. I want to just ask my board how they're feeling about this.
Well, I understand Francie's concerns, but I don't feel like I want to eliminate 1 out of the 5. And I'm comfortable because I think it's a great opportunity for them to do some fundamental infrastructure improvement.
And my guess is DOLA will vet each grant request, and they could choose one or all or none.
Not through DOLA, it's through
Or
the.
it's through whichever this group is. I
Yeah.
don't even know who they are.
It's a different department of the state.
Okay. Any Kelly or Francie again, or Steve, if you want to chime in, just give me some warning.
I just, you
Yeah,
know.
Greg, sounds like a great opportunity. I'd support sending a letter along to Mona.
Okay.
I'll just assume it's
2.
not for like expansion of natural gas, you know, or anything along those lines. I doubt Mona.
Well,
would
it
send
would be nice to see that, but Mona would probably red flag
Not
it.
for building dams on the Crystal. They're not going
Right.
to do that for.
Yeah. Yeah, it really would be nice to know what
So
they
I mean,
requested for.
Yeah, it'd be nice to have more detail. I doubt this is something that will bite us, but you never know.
Well, I think it'll be vetted when they go to distributing the grant monies. So fencing may not qualify because they may not see that as a, infrastructure like the wedding center, which really does create good revenue, and people love it. People love having weddings at the inn. It's a great venue. And I think it's good for business all up and down the boulevard, so.
So if we're comfortable with that the businesses are requesting funds to improve their infrastructure and decrease displacement pressures, and no more, with no more detail than that, are we prepared to sign this?
And I just want to be clear, the Redstone Community Association is the sponsoring entity.
Right.
So we're just writing a letter of recommendation. Yeah, well, I do want to support the Redstone Association. Steve, did you weigh in yet? He said it was a good idea.
Said thought it was a good
Okay,
idea.
I think you said it was a good idea. I hear Francie's concerns. I think that's beyond our conversation right now.
Makes me sick, actually.
But I'd be prepared to sign that letter. Do we need anything else other than direction to get the right copy of
No,
it?
we would, and I just want to make sure we've got a majority of the board in support. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, then that's authorizing the chair to sign, and so we'll prepare
Great.
a copy for you to sign.
And make sure that there's a typo in the first sentence that needs to be corrected, and maybe some other,
It's addressed to us, from us.
well, there's that. Yeah, that's why I was confused to begin with.
Think we
Oh, yeah,
talked to
we're giving
ourselves
the
enough.
grants too.
Nope, they're thorough.
the grant
Mona's
writer.
thorough.
Okay, Katie, is there anything else? Is she still with us? Maybe she checked out.
Yep, no, I'm still here. Nope,
Okay.
that's it. If you needed a template for the letter, Mona does have one of those, and I'm sure that she would be able to send that over to you as soon as she gets home.
We already have
I
it.
think we have it already,
Okay.
so it's just our
Perfect.
template. Okay, thank you. All right,
Thanks, Katie.
does staff need anything else from us on this?
No. Thank you, Katie, for joining.
Thanks, Katie.
Thank you so much.
Okay, then we're done with that topic.
We
There's
had
a
a-
P and Z meeting in,
Yeah,
well, we're
we had
ahead of schedule.
originally, I think we're going to catch you up here.
Oh, right. Yeah,
Because we had originally set time for an election commission discussion. Ingrid was not able to join us today, and I think it may be a more beneficial discussion to have Ingrid here for that, unless the board wants to move forward. Charlotte and I will do our best to cover, but I'd suggest maybe we push this until
I think we
Ingrid's
should have
available.
Ingrid here, but I also, may I?
Yeah, please.
I also think we need to open back up the advertising for the election committee.
I agree with that. And is that, you don't need Ingrid here for us to discuss that.
Nope, we can do that.
But I think that we should reopen that, and Francie,
Should-
Kelly?
And send that gentleman a letter thanking him for applying, and that we've decided to open it back up.
Okay. All
Is that
right,
okay?
So, no on Mr. Kirk, and I will get an ad going
Thank you.
this coming Monday.
Thanks.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Charlotte.
We'll reschedule Ingrid when she returns.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And that's all staff has for open discussion.
That's all we have. Well then, I don't need a motion, but I can adjourn this meeting
Yes, you
at
can.
4:29 and 4 seconds. And John, I hope you feel better. Thank you all
Yeah.
for getting us through the day, and we will see you all soon and talk sooner.